Good afternoon. The Public Safety Committee will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Here. Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Saunier. Vice Chair Aldrich.
Present.
Chair Narayan.
Here.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Saunier. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. A quorum being present, I want to take just a brief moment to ask for a moment of silence. Today's the National Day of Mourning for President Jimmy Carter, so if we could just have a brief moment of silence, I would appreciate that. All right, so now we will move on. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, December 17th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, seconded by Alderman Oldenburg, that we approve the minutes. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Saunier. We're taking votes on the minutes. Vice Chair Aldrich. Chair Narayan.
Aye.
Alderwoman Velazquez. We have 6 aye votes.
All right, with that, we have sustained the motion to approve the minutes. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to SLMPD. I understand that they have a presentation just on some of the supplementation that they've done with the surveillance use plan since our last discussion. So I'll turn it over to them.
Hear me now? All right. So today we just wanted to come back before you to present the surveillance use plans once again after some revisions that were done. Sorry, just trying to go to the first slide. So real quickly, just to give a timeline of these surveillance use plans, I heard one of the comments last time was they seemed like they were thrown together. We started working on these plans back in August, and between myself and a small team to get these together, we presented what we had in December. After that, I've been working on these plans during the break, so it's been 2 weeks between Christmas and New Year's that I've taken a lot of personal time to get this done. And we just wanted to make sure we did more research, included some other things, just so that everyone felt like this was a little bit better organized. And those questions that were asked were providing answers that were more complete. So once we completed it, I sent those new revised use plans to our media person who put them on our website, and that was January 2nd that they were posted to our website. I then sent them to the chair, and from there, I guess he coordinated with the Board of Alder clerk to get them on the site for the city. So the first slide here, again, just talking about how we presented these plans originally December 11th and 12th, and then I just gave you guys a quick timeline. But we did hear a lot of public comment, and we heard the concern. And so taking those concerns, we actually went back to the drawing board, made some revisions, because we are trying to be good partners. and we want to have as much transparency as possible. We did request if we could do a meeting with some members just to sit down and discuss this, ultimately trying to have some community input on the preparation of these, but that was turned down. But what you're getting today is our revisions based off of what we heard and information that I gathered from other use plans in different cities, such as Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, Pasadena, and New York City. So this is what we're presenting today. Additionally, with some of those concerns that were presented, I heard about the Real-Time Crime Center having its own plan. I just wanted to make it very clear that the Real-Time Crime Center is not a jointly operated center. It is our employees. So it's no other entity that is part of that center. It is just SLMPD personnel that are in our Real-Time Crime Center. The St. Louis Fusion Center, another one that's mentioned in our policies, is a jointly operated information center, and it's not our city-run entity. But we do have a SLMPD personnel housed over there, and it's a collaborative effort that we do. Additionally, the department does bias-based policing, and we do annual training. And that's part of our Missouri Peace Officers Standards and Training Program, and those are requirements to do annual training. So just wanted to, I know those were key things that people brought up, but I just wanted to hit on those real quick. So going into Resolution 186, which was the cell site simulator, there were some changes that were made to the surveillance use plan, and some of those were adding product descriptions just to explain more about the functionality of the equipment. Sorry. Also adding some specific information regarding our policies within our purpose. It's in the authorized uses. Prohibitions are expressly laid out. What we wanted to produce was something that I guess was very clear to people on how we use this technology, and in my opinion, some of these address those things. I know we had one individual ask a question about using our technology against immigrants. Expressly stated that in this, that is not how this technology is used, and that we don't use this or really any of our technologies to focus on anyone. And that's in our policies, which are online, but I took that and put that into this actual plan. I didn't want to read this verbatim for you, everyone. Just want to make sure we hit on key points. Another thing was talking about the deployment of the technology and how, you have the court-approved warrant, or it's in exigent circumstances, and those exigent circumstances are laid out as missing persons, at-risk individuals, victims of mass casualty, and then, those search warrants would apply to felony investigations and apprehensions. So that is the gist of the cell site simulation. A lot of the changes in there. So Resolution 187 regarding the mugshot recognition technology. Again, went back through it and taking some key points from other entities and other agencies that have use plans. Went back to the drawing board and tried to put as much information in this that we could. This technology is part of a Regis subscription, and it is part of a collaboration that is done through the St. Louis Fusion Center. I think one of the comments mentioned about facial recognition, we did clear that up in here. We talked about how there is an algorithm that runs this information, and it's against the system. So I just wanted, again, these are updated. They're on our site. I think I tried to point out a lot of the changes really high level, but we went through the purposes. We went through very specific things for these. I feel like it's very spelled out this time around. So if anyone has questions about things like that, I think this use plan now spells it out for you. All right. Now, the forensics hardware and software was one that I wanted to spend a little bit more time on, just because it was something that everyone mentioned. There's multiple things listed in here, and everyone wanted to break them out. So we left it as the one resolution, but we put in the 3 technologies that encompass the forensics cyber crimes technology, which is what it is. Those 3 are Burla, Magnet Gray Key, and then Celebrate. Now, Celebrate and Magnet Gray Key are very similar technologies. They're both for cellular devices and extracting information out of those. So those are 2 separate use plans that are now on our website. They go into the details of how that information is used, how in order to use those technologies, you have to have a search warrant. So those 2 are updated. They have, they're on our website. And then the other one is Burla. Now, Burla is a technology that is used on vehicles. And with that, it's extracting information. It's extracting information from vehicles, the infotainment systems. Again, in order to do that, you need the actual vehicle, you need a search warrant. So, again, it's very clearly spelled out how we can utilize that. We have to follow those search warrants. So when people think, you just do whatever you want, these are search warrants, and it's approved by a judge with a court-ordered search warrant. Resolution 189, ShotSpotter. Again, we've talked about this one in length, but there were questions about product description, and that's something where, as much as I would like to tell you what it looks like, it's technology that is a sensor. So it's kind of difficult to actually say, this is what it looks like off of the website. If you even look through the descriptions from the actual vendor themselves, it's what was really in there already. So outside of that, we did make some adjustments on how it's utilized, how we utilize it, what's prohibited. Very, very straightforward. Added, what else? Added some information on like the data protection stuff, just to ensure everyone's very clear on, how this is being handled and privacy concerns around that. Resolution 190 was the citywide cameras. Again, another one that we broke down and broke out. So from that, you got 3 different use plans. We have the real-time crime video surveillance system, the mobile surveillance trailers, and situational awareness cameras, also air support cameras. Now, these were broken up by their functionality and their uses and their capabilities. Citywide cameras, they're all over the city. Red and blue lights for the most part. You know where they are. They're recording. They feed into the real-time crime center. And I mean, that's their public safety. Mobile surveillance trailers, those are the large trailers that I think sometimes people think is ShotSpotter, and it's not. It's got red and blue lights on it. It's got a camera on it, and we can move those around the city. And those are moved based on requests from residents, alders, depending on some crime trends and things like that. And then last but not least, situational awareness cameras or the air support cameras. Those are used during, with the helicopter and with the drone. So those are cameras that are on those. The drone's utilized during search warrants. The helicopter's used in, great example is when we're having vehicle pursuits. So it's just tactical advantage to make sure that everything's going okay. So again, those three were broken down because people were very concerned about them all being in one policy, and we wanted to make sure that that was very clear on those different capabilities and the functions. Resolution 191. Is GPS technology. Now, I did not separate these two out, even though there are two things discussed in this. It's a subscription-based, and it's also the vehicle device. These were not separated because that subscription-based one is more of an option that people want to do. So it's not really, we have access to the platform, but it's optional. People can opt in for it. So I left these together because technically they do the same thing. They're GPS, and they help with crimes and trying to finish out investigations. There were some adjustments made, especially with the to talk about the discriminatory impact avoidance. We just kind of hit on the fact that, we do those policies and that we do take measures to ensure that there is no discriminatory impact. But again, a lot of that is training, things that we must abide by, national standards on those things. 192 is automated license plate reader. And with that one, there were some adjustments. There was, especially, again, product information was a big one. I tried to do as much as we could, just explaining what it is. It's a camera as well, but it's taking pictures with license plate. And one of the questions I have kind of been seeing it around is that they wanted to do 30 days versus 90 days. And just for information purposes, the state of Missouri's retention policy on that is 108 days. When we first implemented LPR, we had the ACLU come in. They looked at the real-time crime center. And the discussion around the retention period was had during that time. We reduced it's to 90 days. And it was based on 90 days because that's what we believed we needed for investigations in case we needed to go back. But 90 days is what we had agreed with. Other than that, again, very minor changes in here, but making sure people understand how we actually use these technologies, and it's very clear that we're not trying to target anyone or anyone's religion, anything like that. We want to make sure people feel protected in the city of St. Louis, and we're protecting everyone's civil rights and liberties. Last one is Resolution 193. Sorry, went too far. 193, it was the body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. I separated those two out. And the reason for separating those two, because again, they do the same thing. They record police officer interactions, but one's mounted to a vehicle, one's mounted to a person. They are very similar because retention times, how we use the data, all that stuff is the same. It's just two different technologies. So the biggest change in these two is going to be the product descriptions. And that is just a quick rundown of what we did to address some of the concerns. Again, I didn't want to just read verbatim exactly what's been updated, but I want to respect people's times, and I wanted to give people an opportunity to comment. So, thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will open it up to questions for the committee. Alderman Oldenburg has already let me know he doesn't have any questions. Alderman Clark Hubbard, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions at this time. I'm waiting to hear from the public as well.
Okay. Alderwoman Keys, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. Alderwoman Velasquez,
No questions at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Alderwoman Sonier.
Yes, doesn't surprise anybody that I have a question.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. First of all, just I wanted to thank you for your work on the use plans. I know that you did spend a lot of the break working on the use plan. And I know you were the primary person who worked on them before, and I know this is the first time that we've done this as a city, and so there's kind of a learning curve for everyone. I did see when I went back that there was an effort to address, the concerns that were brought forth, so I just wanted to just thank you first and acknowledge your work.
Thank you.
I think my first question, and I just want to bear in mind that these questions are kind of given the political context of not necessarily the city, but the larger area of just like, folks in our area who are abortion advocates or immigrant organizations who I've been trying to do my best to bring them along with as we've have just kind of asked some questions and sent some things. So I just want to highlight that some of these are not necessarily just about like concerns for you all, but I think just like we have the bounty hunter bill at the state, just people concerned of like, will our technology be used against them, whether or not that was our intention. I saw on the website, and it might be an accident, but on the website, it said that the use plans were updated in accordance with the executive order. So that would just be my first point of clarification. Were they updated in accordance with the executive order, or were they updated in accordance with the legislation?
It was legislation.
Okay. I'll just send a separate flag to you for that component then.
And I'm sorry, is that something that's actually on the website itself?
Yeah, on the website, it says in compliance with executive order. And then my second question is, I know I do see the inclusion of like some new use plans for the technologies that we asked for. So does that mean that we will get, there will be new resolutions filed with those use plans? Because I think that's what the ordinance calls for.
So my understanding was resolutions when they were presented. I understand people wanted them broken down. I didn't know if I had to present new use plans, but because I kind of spoke about those technologies in that resolution, I just broke them out.
Okay. I guess we can hear from the community as well. I did, like I said, when I read through, I understood why you did it, how you did it. I just think technically by legislation might require anytime a new technology is mentioned, it's supposed to get its own resolution, I think. And I'll let the alderman who legislation to speak, but I think that might be the formal requirement. Okay, so in the use plans, there are just a number of, like kind of, I think, internal policies that are referenced. But they're like referenced, but not outlined plans.
So yes, I do reference those. I hit on some parts of those that applied. So I reference them because you can find the entire policy up, but I just put the parts that apply to each section and each question.
Okay. But if there was a specific, so basically you didn't go through breaking down all the internal policies. You identified the internal policies that you thought was most relevant to the technology being discussed and broke those down.
Yes.
Okay.
And then when it came to some of the like information about bias-based policing, I would take lines out of that policy, but that's why I made sure to reference those policies so everyone knew those are on the same page, but they can go and see the entire policy if they wanted to.
Okay. And then specifically in the data collection section, the A of the ALPR use plan, I'll give you some time to flip there. And really what I'm asking about is basically in the APR plan, it says that in the use plan, it says that it's held for 90 days. But then also referenced in the special ordinance number section, SO 527, it states that the records are generally retained for 6 months. So is there a difference between reads and retained, or is it the 90-day period or the 6-month period?
So originally they had went with the 6 month. But when the ACLU came in and we had the meeting with them to show them Real-Time Crime Center, we actually went with 90 days, which is less than 6 months. It's also about capacity and what you can retain, but we're at 90 days.
Okay, so any references to 6 months would be something that was, it was in that ordinance because that was before you guys updated after your meeting with ACLU.
Say that again.
So it would, maybe it's still listed there under 5027 because that's what it was before you all met with ACLU.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I know you mentioned the like kind of the website updates, but and maybe this is something that's on the clerk, which would be good for us to know if we need to have further conversations. But like typically on our like calendar are like site references to where things go. Do you know if you had any conversations with the clerk, or is he just working to still update that portion?
So I have not had conversations with the clerk. Our policy, these were all placed on our site. When I've completed
Or
them,
the chair, I'm sorry. You would have sent them to the chair and the chair
I
would have sent
submitted
them
to
to
the chair, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So I think that's just something on the back end that we can handle. And when if I don't know how this is going to go, but maybe just in the future, or I think it would be helpful if the use policies were attached to the resolutions some kind of way. And it might be easier to do that digitally when you guys are emailing us, or to put a link when put them online. Because a lot of times when I was trying to help people navigate, they just kind of struggled to go back and forth between the two.
Gotcha.
And my last question, I sent the email just with a lot of stuff, and one of the questions that I had asked about was red light cameras.
Yes.
I do, I think I understand you all stance, but for the sake of a record, I'm going to ask you, and then I'm going to say how I feel about it.
Okay, so I'm sorry about that. But so my understanding with the red light cameras is we are not the lead agency on that. That is a different city entity. So it would be up to them to submit the use plan for that.
And do you know what city entity that is? The streets department? Okay. So you're saying we could get a use plan, but we would need that department to do it because
Right.
they're over that portion of it. Okay. Okay, that completes my questions for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then last but not least, Vice Chair Aldridge, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. First, I want to thank you, Monet, for. I know we've had offline conversations about the use plans, and I know how hard you have been working on these use plans. This is a new process that has been trying to get passed for years, and if it wasn't for all community members that have been organizing to make sure that this can get done, we probably wouldn't have got there. And I appreciate all their hard work and commitment and questions and concerns to also ensure that some of these technologies aren't. I think a lot of people's fear is how much, especially as technology advance, how much is Big Brother or the police department using these technologies that's not violating people's civil liberties. So, but I know that you have put countless hours of trying to get it. I don't think it'd be perfect, but I do think we can get as much information that can be helpful to the public. And so we know that where our taxpayer dollars are being spent is being spent in a way that actually go to protect and serve residents and not spy on them. But thank you for your leadership. One thing I do want to flag, maybe um, agree to disagree. You know, I think Alderwoman Sonia brought up, you know, the way I interpret the ordinance is that these use plans should be on, because they're on there now, they're on the Board of Aldermen website. So the updated ones are, I believe, on the police department's website. But typically the way that like we work at the Board of Aldermen, and I know you're new here, but maybe the chair or somebody can make sure that these updated use plans are emailed over to the clerk. So under the resolutions, all these new use plans, like they're on the SLMPD page, that they can also be on the Board of Aldermen's page, so that people in the community can actually kind of know where they are. I think a lot of folks that come to these hearings, they usually click on the hearing or they click on the alders who's filing it, and that's the way you can kind of track it.
Okay.
So that would be, I think, helpful in the future as these things move. Around the cyber technology, is it a way, and maybe I'm missing it, so please correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to manufacture and the production, is it a way like those names of those manufacturers of those cyber technologies can be added to the use plan?
So those are the names that I know them by. And again, I went through other cities that had them, so I saw that, you know, they were listed that way as well. So I'm not sure if there's any other names for them. It's just-
Okay. So the real-time crime center,
Mhm.
is there a way that with that at least the full list of technologies that are included in the real-time crime center, surveillance crime center, can also be clear of what they
What they are the hub of?
yes.
So I guess the easiest way to answer that is everything minus, let me make sure I'm telling you the right thing. Okay, so everything that has been presented, except for the cybercrimes technologies, which are, you know, they're their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, body worn camera, in-car camera, and body worn camera, in-car camera. Everything else is under the real-time crime center.
Okay.
So just to explain it so people understand, real-time crime center is part of our intelligence unit,
Mm-hmm.
and those technologies all fall under that unit, but they're run through, like, the real-time crime center really has access to a lot of that stuff and that information.
Okay. Is it also for the real-time crime center, could there be like a little bit more elaboration on like what what agencies collaborate?
So there are no agencies collaborating with us.
Okay.
So the real-time crime center, if we were to walk over there, it's our officers sitting in chairs, and there's a screen of monitors which show the city cameras.
Do the county collaborate with you all if like somebody, I guess, come in from St. Louis County or Jefferson County, I don't know, like in the surrounding?
So if there was a felony, like if you're saying like there's a pursuit, this might be better to turn over to like a Marcos or Joe if I'm. No worries. Okay, so really, he's asking about collaboration on real-time crime center. So my best example would be if county were having a pursuit and they're coming in, they're going to notify us.
Please speak into the mic so it can be recorded.
Sorry. So my example would be county coming into having a car pursuit, coming into the city. They're going to make notification, But as far as us giving them information, we're not.
Correct, yeah, there is none, that, there is no current sharing, like they can't access, like the city's camera, the city's LPRs, nothing to that sort. It would be like a phone call or on the radio and say, hey, there's a coming to your jurisdiction through their 911 center.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm jumping around a little bit here. My notes all over the place. The way that I did it. Thank you, Detective.
Sergeant Marcos.
Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So for the mobile camera trailers, I guess y'all don't call those
Sky Cops.
Sky Cops no more. Y'all want to call them mobile trailers, which is fine.
Because Sky Cop sounds really, really bad.
Yeah,
They're not in the sky.
that's true. It is one right outside here at it's interesting at right next to the market in the park that's fenced up, that not too much activity happened. So whoever deployed that one right there, somebody who live across the street. I usually look out my window and only folks at the park is like folks walking a dog. So it was interesting. It did help me in the snow the other day with all the ice to hold on to it, but I did see one deployed. Is that Chestnut and maybe 13th Street, right across the street from the Soldiers Memorial? It's been there for a few weeks.
The camera?
Yeah, the mobile camera trailer.
That's up to a captain's discretion. They usually move those cameras due to either a crime trend, some incidents that are going on. The captains of the district move those around independently. Each district has a certain number of them. Normally, like when I was the captain of District 3, I know I had 3 of them, and I could move them at my discretion. A lot of times we get calls from an alder person that needed something on a block, that a certain block was hot. They would ask to move that Sky Cop there. So it's pretty much at the captain's discretion where those cameras.
Yes, and I will say, to be clear, I have. I don't think it's Captain Benoist anymore. I think it's Major. Congratulations to him. He did good work, but in the past, when needing, like you say, that technology because of a heavy block of activity, like you say, we have deployed those. I find the one that's right there, I don't think need to be deployed. I'm just throwing it out there. But I do got questions on the mobile trailer, but it's not much happening over on Chestnut and 13th. Maybe you can put in a different area. But for the mobile cameras, I noticed that it says like that no data is recorded. Am I tripping? Or like no data from that? Or maybe I'm looking at. Oh no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, that's the wrong one. I was looking at the awareness cameras.
No data is recorded on that.
So what if a prosecutor need to review? You're saying that there's no.
So situational awareness. Situational awareness cameras are going to be for like if I'm doing a tactical operation and I need to make sure, have an idea what's going on in that situation.
And can you explain a little bit like what a situation
Yes,
camera
so
for?
we have a drone and we have a helicopter. So those are the 2 types. The drone is deployed on search warrants. Helicopter, vehicle pursuit's the best thing.
So in the midst of like a search warrant, if a drone is being used,
you have a search
sure
warrant.
that's a criminal situation.
Right.
You would need that data to.
You're just trying to figure out what's going on. So you're just trying to see versus record anything, because if you can put yourself at a better advantage, then it would help.
I can add like an example. Say if you have a violent offender that's in a house, and let's say we call it a 7250, like a hostage situation.
You call it a what? Can you get up on the mic a little bit, Sergeant?
Like if we have a hostage situation and we will breach the door and send the drone in just so we can get a layout of the property and of the residence and maybe locate exactly where that person is, so we don't put our officers in jeopardy if they actually do have to deploy and go into that residence. And same as for a search warrant. It's mainly for an officer safety issues. So we can see the outlay of the residence, and we send that back to our officers so that we can put down like a floor plan, if you will. And so then when they make entry, they know exactly where to go. So they're not going in there blind. So it's more of a safety aspect than anything, and none of that is recorded. It's basically just to gather real-time information right then and there for the team that's on the ground.
Okay. And there's no cost for those?
They were one-time costs once we purchased them. There's no, they have 2-year warranty, so they're still covered.
Okay. Getting to the mobile camera trailers. Let me see. So, so the maintenance, I have a question about. So, does the maintenance grant also account for gasoline on those?
No.
So that comes out of the city's budget that we grant to the police department.
Alderman, I believe they're filled by the fire department in collaboration with the PD. So that would come from the fire department.
Okay. And so the fire department pays for the gasoline?
Yes, they have the fuel trucks. They're the ones that go and fill them up for us.
Okay. And I think it's stated that for those mobile trailer cameras, I'm getting used to saying the name. So for the data retention, is it retained for 30 days?
So yes, it follows the same retention as the cameras. It's 30 days.
Okay. I'm actually about to get off topic a little bit here. And maybe this will be in the use plan because when the legislation was passed in the future, the partnership that you guys have with downtown and those new devices that are like outside the convention center, the new AI, Alicia, what is it called? The AI, yeah. Look that up for me. I'll come back to that one. I'll save it, but
It's not ours.
no, but what the downtown said is they working with the police department on those technology, on that new technology. But I don't want to get distracted because I'm getting a little distracted. Okay, I'll come back to it. So you said but for the mobile trailers, it is 30 days. That do you guys just keep it? I mean, because they sit there and they just like for good reasons. Do you keep it to hoping for like future investigations, or I mean, I'm trying to figure out what is the long amount of time for retaining kind of that data for 30 days.
It's actually twofold. A lot of times you'll find when you deploy a Sky Cop, the crime within 500 feet of that will go down. There's studies that show that. So that's one thing is we put it there for a deterrent so that people know that they're on camera and they're not going to do anything. So that gives us time maybe to do an investigation and things like that we have to do in that area. But secondly, as far as the retention of the 30 days, that's just in case something's sure to come up. Normally, when it's actually after an incident would occur, when let's say an incident occurs, the Sky Cop is on the block, that officer immediately gets on with Real-Time Crime Center. Hey, did you see this incident on the camera? Yeah, I have it. Then they can download that and we can use it for court purposes or in prosecution if need be. Or if a car is stolen or something like that, we can get the plate, get everything out right away. So it's more of a reactionary tool. Nobody sits there and watches the video and all these. We don't have the manpower or the time to watch it, but it's usually more for reactive to go back and to get information right away so that we can get some actionable intelligence out to the officers that are working.
One more question on the trailers, and I'll move to the which I have a question on for retention with the ALPRs. So who, I guess, for the data protection, who are the authorized personal individuals who have like access to that system? Is it?
It's Alderman. You're talking about for the mobile trailer?
Yes, sir.
It would be the Real-Time Crime Center and the investigators, like all commission personnel. The camera trailers you can think of as just an extension of the physical cameras, the regular cameras, and they're accessed through the same system. So when you log in into the system, they're just there. They're the physical cameras, and the mobile camera trailers are just deployed where typically physical normal cameras, like the one with the blue flashing lights, we can't deploy them because of power, data, you know,
So the cameras,
come to the same system.
gotcha. The cameras that are on the mobile trailers are also um, similarly the same cameras that may be on streets that are at the real-time
Yes, sir.
crime center. So the mobile trailer they can see at the real-time crime center.
Yes, sir. Yes, they're pretty much the same. The cameras are they have the same capabilities on both systems. One is just mobile, and the other one's just fixed.
Roughly how many of those do we have?
Trailers?
Yes.
I think it's 47. 47, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. It was a lot of those. Well, did we buy them, or was those grants that were?
We bought them in phases. There was like there was Police Foundation. There was grants. The HARPA grant was used. So we bought them over time. I believe the 2016, if I'm not 2017 maybe was when we started, and then is progressively increased.
Okay. On the ALPRs, Monique, could you kind of explain maybe what that is for like the general folks around here,
Oh,
or the folks that's watching?
ALPRs are automated license plate readers, or recognition system. And that is, it's a license plate reader. So it's a stationary camera that takes a photo of a license plate on a vehicle.
Okay. And the retention for that is 90 days.
Correct.
That's also a camera. And the retention for the mobile trailers is 30.
Correct.
What is the
difference?
The difference where the camera for license plates reader is additional like 60 days?
Well,
there's Alderman, there's two different things here. So one is the ALPR, just taking still images. Those pictures themselves, they're kept for 90 days. And the other one is just, let's put them like a film, like regular video. Those are kept for 30 days. And those are, and just to clarify, the mobile trailers are not equipped with the LPRs. So the LPRs are just on the intersections and locations, just looking at vehicles, just taking snapshot pictures. That's what they do.
Yeah, but I was saying, why do we keep the retention for those 60 more days longer than like the mobile?
That's one was, decided at the time that was just implemented. And I believe the maximum retention, it is up to 6 months. And we, decided to stick with the 90 days because we thought it was reasonable at the time.
Okay.
We never changed it.
Okay. Is there a way, Ms. Monet, for the LPRs and the use plan for like what vendors is used for those technologies?
Do we have all the same vendors?
Yes.
Okay.
We can potentially put that in there. I'm not sure if the information is available.
Can you just speak into the mic, please?
Okay.
Sorry. We'll look into getting that information in here. But just give us a little bit. We have to make sure everybody is on the same.
Okay. And lastly, and then I will wrap it on up for community members, ShotSpotter, which is now Sound Thinking, which is, I believe,
ShotSpotter.
oh, it's still ShotSpot?
So the company is now called Sound Thinking. ShotSpotter is a portion of it.
Okay. For the last two meetings that we had where there were, where we had a presentation posted been on, I think the use plans, we got educated on why ShotSpotter is just so fabulous.
You didn't want to bring it back?
Please don't bring him back. I see he's changed the tune a little bit. He went from criticizing ShotSpotters to being a cheerleader for the junk science of ShotSpotters. How long do y'all keep the data for the ShotSpotter? What is the retention around that?
So I want to make sure I give you exactly the correct information. So it is. I'm sorry. Okay. So it is kept for 30 hours. That on the sensor itself. 30 hours. And then in here, we talked about how there is information that goes to the,
Their center.
their center that is kept for them to make tweaks to the system to make it better so that, you know, it's learning. So they keep some stuff, but for us, it's 30 hours.
I will say when it comes to shot spotters, you know, I do think that some technology can be beneficial. And I think having this information so that like folks know how it's being used, I want to be very clear. Somebody who sponsors the bill, the point is not to like eliminate the technologies, but to get more transparency and clearance, to be clear of what these are. And when it comes to shot spotters, I think that is probably one technology that the city can look at. How do we invest taxpayer dollars in that is actually more effective? That's just my personal opinion. But I know we're talking about the use of that plan, but I do think there can be other beneficial ways than taxpayer dollars going to shot spotters. That's just a comment, but that's all I got. I appreciate, again, I do want to double down, appreciate all your hard work on these use plans. Chief of Staff, Monet.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Aldridge, for that. At this point, I'll open it up to public comment.
Ooh, Mr. Chair, do not kill me. I'm so sorry. One
Go
quick
ahead.
last question. So Rosa is the name of that technology that they're using. Maybe I can get with you offline on it. Rosa, have you guys heard about the Rosa technology? Rosa.
And this is which technology? I'm sorry.
To be respectful of the community's time, I'll get with you on that. Okay.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please call the first speaker up.
The first speaker I have on Resolution 186 is Chris Wilcox.
All right. I'm pulling up my stopwatch here. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right, 3 minutes, please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Wilcox. I live in the 14th Ward. I urge the committee to reject SLMPD's use plan for its surveillance technology. The simplest reason is that they did not submit a use plan that meets the minimum requirements from the law that passed last year by the Board of Aldermen. It does not detail, for example, use of the Real-Time Crime Center, which is the hub for its surveillance operations since 2014. It outlines use for ShotSpotter. While SLMPD's academic witness appears to have traded his professional credentials to reverse his previous findings that it does not work, he argues for an entirely new purpose for this junk technology with no new evidence provided. This is exactly why CCOPS needed to be passed. SLMPD is clearly demonstrating that it is not willing to submit to basic democratic oversight. Knowing that ShotSpotter does not differentiate between gunshots and similar loud noises to prevent gun violence, they are now arguing it is an effective tool for investigation. This is not reflected in the data on murder cases. Writers for St. Louis Public Radio reported that more than 1,000 of 1,900 murders over the last decade are unsolved. Less than half of these cases involving Black victims are solved, despite data revealed by Wired magazine demonstrating that ShotSpotters are disproportionately placed in majority Black neighborhoods. It's also absurd on its face that SLMPD will argue that an answer to lack of public trust in police response can be solved by showing up without their consent through surveillance. It should be a major scandal that SLMPD has been using a cell site simulator for 10 years, apparently without the knowledge of elected officials. The police chief lied to this committee months ago when he said that Stingray is a qualitatively different technology from what it uses. The Post-Dispatch wrote about a robbery case in 2015 that prosecutors dropped, possibly to avoid disclosing the use of the technology. The paper documented SLMPD was attempting to purchase a Stingray brand device as far back as 2012. It is worth noting that SLMPD thought it would suffice to copy-paste a single sentence stating that they received video from private cameras. This is not allowed without specific approval, and the public disclosure is nowhere near enough in detail. This is part of a larger problem that even elected officials do not know how SLMPD its technology. In 2019, an investigation by Rebecca Rivas into the Real-Time Crime Center, police presented a draft privacy plan for full 5 years after the program was in operation. They could provide no evidence of compliance with any privacy guidelines. We don't know how many times a cop used the surveillance to stalk his ex-wife, collect data for the state to prosecute someone for getting an abortion, or follow a protester fully within their First Amendment rights. The fact that this plan was submitted without outlining the decade-long program is an insult to our intelligence, a violation of the law that this board passed to exercise civilian oversight over a police department operating in the shadows for over a decade. At minimum, SLMPD needs to do its homework properly this time. I urge the committee to reject this use plan and demand the serious proposal that treats St. Louis residents with an ounce of respect. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Annie Rice. In opposition.
All right.
Do
Annie,
you
do you
swear-
swear or
oh, yeah,
affirm
sorry. Yep.
that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right, 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Annie Rice, and I work for Arch City Defenders. So I want to say thank you for having this hearing again. Thank you for taking the time to work on revisions for these policies. Overarchingly, I want to say that surveillance as a part of public safety scheme is a delicate balance of interests to protect the rights of citizens and the uses for police operations. The delicate balance should favor privacy of residents who are doing no harm. The CCOPS process is designed to allow the public a meaningful opportunity to provide feedback and consent or opposition to these technologies. The way that this meeting was noticed and the way that these use plans, the revised use plans were posted, does not meet the requirements of the ordinance. A member of the public cannot look at the calendar notification and know where to find the updated plans. The resolutions no longer match the plans posted on the SLMPD website, and the website says that they're posted in accordance with the executive order, not the ordinance. So a general member of the public could not connect the dots today to be here and adequately respond to these things. So I am grateful that we have the opportunity to highlight some of these things, and hopefully we can fix those going forward for the next one. I appreciate revisions as we're working to get these plans right. I know that it's a significant amount of work. There are still gaps that need to be filled. One of the things that we are asking for is the manufacturer's descriptions, and by that means specifically taking those out of the contracts, off of the manufacturer's websites or whatever, because there are different brands of these technologies that have different capabilities. And in order for people to actually understand what it is that they do, it would be really helpful to have that specific verbiage. I agree. One of the questions that was raised was, can we put the policies in with the use plans, in with the connected resolution? Just trying to connect the dots of all of the different documents is incredibly difficult, and that could be rectified. The other, to clearly go back to the ordinance requirements for posting. So upon receipt of the information, changes, and/or comments provided by the city entity, the committee shall make the provided information, changes, and comments available to the public at a designated page on the city website. I think this is partially met if the committee had indicated, hey, this is over on SLMPD's website, then that may have sufficed. But again, we're still missing the resolution connections to the use plans as posted, and there's nothing on the Board of Aldermen website to direct folks to that. I don't have any more specific comments about the cell site simulator at the moment, because again, we were notified on Monday that their revised plans were here, and we are all scrambling to review and provide feedback as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Madam
We
Clerk, the next
have
speaker.
John Chasnoff online. Mr. Chasnoff, please turn your mic on and your camera.
Okay, sorry for that technical problem there.
No worries. Do you swear to affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
So I did submit written testimony. I did submit written testimony to the committee where I gave detailed comments in the margins over all these use plans. And so I'm going to try my best today not to just repeat what's already in written form. And I hope that you all can, take the time to look over those written comments in some detail. But I wanted to give kind of a summary of my thoughts of the use plans. First of all, I did think that they're much improved, and so I want to acknowledge that. I think that the policewoman who spoke obviously has put in a bunch of her own time to make that happen, and I appreciate that. I do think that institutionally, the police department has let us down once again with these use plans, that they're still inadequate. Maybe they needed more personnel to bring these up to speed. But I wanted to list some of the problems that I think are continuous throughout the use plans because I'm sure over and over. Ms. Rice mentioned the fact that we still don't have manufacturer data, and that's really crucial because different manufacturers have different capabilities. And also when capabilities are described, they're often in very vague terms. So you can talk about a camera and the fact that it pan, tilts, and zooms, but if you don't tell us, can it zoom for 1 block away, for 2 blocks away? What actually are the capabilities of these various technologies? We're still not learning enough to know how to, pass judgment about. It also states repeatedly on various technologies that there is no sharing of this information. But it's hard to believe that this information isn't shared with other law enforcement entities. So for instance, if there's a car chase, a crime begins in the county and moves into the city, it's captured on film and the arrest is captured on film. Are you telling me that that information is not shared with another law enforcement agency? I just don't think that matches up. There's also, in terms of oversight, we often hear that so-and-so is in charge of oversight for this technology. But that's not telling us how the oversight works. So what are the protocols for the oversight? Do they review, the information once a day? Do they look randomly at various submissions of the technology, but not at every submission? We need to know a lot more about how the oversight actually works. We also hear that we also hear often very limited descriptions of what information is captured. So we'll hear about GPS that it only captures the location and the battery strength, and but what's implied by
minutes, if you could just finish your thought, please.
Okay. So we don't know we're not learning what knowledge is actually gained by that technology. So when you know somebody's location, you know where they slept that night, they know whether they were home with their wife or where they had a girlfriend. So a lot of information that's gathered by this surveillance technology that's not really explicitly revealed in the reports. I'll pick up again next.
Sure. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Sage Coram in opposition.
Okay. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right, 3 minutes, please proceed.
Thank you. Hello, committee members. My name is Sage Coram. I'm with the ACLU of Missouri. And I want to echo and reaffirm what we've heard in public testimony so far. We are a part of a coalition that has been working on the CCOPS ordinance and then to bring this into practice for a very long time. So as the ACLU of Missouri, we are in line with all of our community organizations and with the public having a true and transparent process here so that they can understand what's being used, so that you as committee members can hear from them, and then you can evaluate, right, whether or not these technologies should be used. In particular to the cell site simulator, I want to highlight one thing about what is continuing to be a little bit confusing in these use plans. I will say from the top, the product description in this use plan is much improved, and that is helpful for public understanding. It is still missing that manufacturer product description, which other folks have indicated is critical to understanding, because different products have different capabilities. So they're saying that this tech can't do certain things, and that may be true for the model that they have, but it's not necessarily true across cell site simulators. So that's why we need that manufacturer's information specifically. But going to what's confusing about some of this data retention stuff. So on pages 4 and 5 of the revised use plan for the cell site simulator, throughout the use plan where it's being said that data is automatically deleted after it's used. But then it's also saying on page 4 and 5 that in line with the Department of Justice's policy guidance for the use of cell site simulators, which is followed by SLMPD, it indicates three practices. In practice 2 there is that when the equipment is used to identify an unknown cellular device, all data must be deleted as soon as the target device is identified, in any event no less than once every 30 days. So can't something be retained for 30 days? And then the next 1.3 is that the operator must verify that the equipment has been cleared of any previous operational data before it's used again. So we're having confusion between no data is stored, data is automatically deleted, and then policy points that are saying something has to be deleted no less than once every day. Operational data needs to be cleared every time. So just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next speaker.
Elizabeth Swartz online. Ms. Swartz, please turn on your camera and your microphone.
Hello.
Hi, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
Absolutely.
All right, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Schwartz. I'm a resident of the 4th Ward, and I would like to testify against the Resolution 186. I do want to echo what everyone has said so far, which is just that I really do appreciate the amount of work that the police have put into adding all of this information. Frankly, the officer whose name I don't know, who spent her break having to do this, should not have had to do this. This information should be readily available already, and it is not fair to her that she had to spend all of that time over break combing together all this information when everyone should be working on this. There should be like an all hands on deck situation. So in terms of the cell site simulator, I also had a lot of concerns around the data retention. I was a bit confused. It says that data is not retained and is deleted immediately after use, but then it doesn't say in what timeline data has to be used. So that's concerning to me on that one in particular. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, so I'm a librarian working with digital information and databases and stuff like that. So when we talk about how information is generated through these particular pieces of hardware, that can only tell us so much. We also need to know about how information is then stored and shared. Every single time a piece of information is captured and shared, it actually gets changed. And so at every single step in that pipeline, it's essential that we know the actual make, model, manufacturer number, and software being used in order to understand what the St. Louis Police Department is doing with our data and with whom it's being shared with all of those different vendors coming into play. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say about the cell site simulator. I would urge you all to not pass this resolution in general, because I don't think we need it.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kennedy Moore in opposition.
Hello, committee. My name is Kennedy Moore with Abortion Action Missouri.
Do
Thank
you
you
swear
for
to
letting
affirm
me
that the
have the
testimony that you're
opportunity to
about to give is
submit. Oh, sorry.
and do you swear to affirm that the
I do.
testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right, please proceed.
All right. So yes, as I was saying, my bad. Thank you for allowing me to submit testimony in opposition to Board Resolutions 186 through 193. Essentially, the current use plans, they fail to fully meet the requirements established by Ordinance 71842, and they raise questions on discriminatory impact, product descriptions, the difference in terminology in the use plans versus the departmental special orders, and data retention, specifically in regards to the safety and privacy of people seeking reproductive health care in our city or that are traveling through our city to the closest abortion clinics in Southwest Illinois. Especially in this moment, while our state partners work through the courts to be able to reestablish abortion care in our state after ending the abortion ban at the ballot box, coupled with the incoming federal administration's blatant hostility for abortion access, patients, providers, and advocates, it is more important than ever for our city to be as thoughtful as possible and prepared as possible to protect the people of our city and everyone from the criminalization or frivolous lawsuits for access to reproductive health care like abortion. As St. Louis becomes a national hub for people that are forced to travel from the South or the Midwest for abortions. The proposed surveillance technology uses plans as currently written. They don't contain the necessary information to discern what information will be collected and where it will be stored, and also what proactive measures will be taken to ensure the privacy data collected that could be used to criminalize and or target people for accessing healthcare like abortion. And so it's our responsibility as a city that leads on reproductive freedom to be thoughtful and explore any and all possible unintended consequences before advancing these uses. We'll have to rely on these plans throughout the upcoming federal administration and throughout the years of litigation it'll take to work through the anti-abortion laws that are on the book in our state. And with all of that being said, just a reminder that Missourians' reproductive health care decisions are already being surveilled by the state. In 2019, it was revealed that the former Missouri Health Director for the Department of Health and Senior Services, Randall Williams, monitored the menstrual cycles of patients who visited reproductive health services of Planned Parenthood in St. Louis. Williams specifically tried to target those who sought abortion care or presumably could be seeking abortion care, and state officials seeking to use an individual's personal health information against them and their providers is not hypothetical. It is a reality. It has happened in our state. Surveillance technologies in a state already hostile to abortion and reproductive rights inherently creates conditions where government agencies are able to record and store surveillance footage of people seeking health care at reproductive health care clinics and ultimately criminalize them.
That
Earlier
is
this
your 3
year.
You could just wrap up your thoughts, please.
Okay. This is just thinking about all of this. It's very imperative that we slow down this process enough to take the time to be confident that surveillance data that is collected by our city cannot be inadvertently used to stifle reproductive freedom and target people accessing abortion or any other type of reproductive care in the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rachel in opposition online.
All right. And Rachel, could you state your full name for the record, please?
Rachel Hurtado.
All right. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
Yes, I do.
All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Hurtado. I live in Ward 7, and I just want to maybe give some grounding thoughts as we go through all of these use plans again, because I know that there's a lot of gratitude expressed by committee members towards the police department for them engaging this process in good faith, going and making edits and coming back to the committee. And that maybe, after one round of that, it feels like enough. And it feels like they have, done their due diligence. I understand that we all know that the police department is a massively powerful political force in our city that you as elected officials must be attuned to. And maybe, probably, you approach your job as an elected official working towards compromise between what your constituents want and are advocating for and what this extremely powerful force of the police department wants to do. And I just want to say, if there was ever a time to depart from this approach in your role, that time would be now. Because the police are already at a massive advantage in this process. These plans only have to be passed once for all of this surveillance technology to be permanently implemented in our city. And I just want to remind you all that we have to disconnect this incorrect correlation that the police want you to draw, which is that more technology tools equals more safety. That is not true. And sometimes in the case where it may be true marginally, there are still massive risks and dangers that outweigh those benefits. But in more cases than not, the benefits are extremely questionable because of the empirical evidence that is not available for these tools that are experimental in nature. And I urge y'all to not let the police department or manufacturers that want money from partnerships with the police department to exploit our city for private profit and use St. Louis as experimenting grounds for these technologies that we know are harmful and do not work. And if that were true, if it was true that technology equals more safety, there would be no crime in St. Louis because of all of the new technologies the police have deployed in the last 30 years. Do not assume that an increase in surveillance is what's going to make the residents of our city safer. There are other strategies and other entities that we can use to improve public safety here. For example, I think the entire staff of the Show Me Peace program showed up at the last budget cycle and unsuccessfully begged the Board of Aldermen to increase funding for the community-based non-carceral gun violence interruption program, because that is what community members were asking them to do, was serve outside of those 3 very limited catchment areas. And they didn't get any funding reallocated.
3 minutes, if you could just wrap up your thoughts, please.
I urge y'all to think about other strategies here and not just assume that more technology keeps us safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mike White online.
All right.
Hey.
All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm fully, opposed or not, but I guess I just I kind of like to know more. I think the second speaker brought up a good point that it was just hard to prepare for this meeting accurately. I read through the surveillance use plan on the city website and just sort of learned that we have something like 646 cameras. We spent about $500,000 between city funds and grants on these cameras. So it's like $800 a camera, just about. We spent $80,000 servicing the cameras last year. The other document that I found on there basically puts these mobile trailer things. We spent, $1.6 million on trailers, and then about another $250,000 on, I guess, the cameras for the trailers. So I guess my question really is just, I'd like to know, just even financially speaking, what's the ROI on all this equipment? I really kind of tend to agree with Rachel that technology does not really equate to safety. From my perspective, the city doesn't feel any safer with these cameras. So I would like to get some data from the police department or from you guys. It just kind of goes over, how are these things actually being used? What crimes have they stopped? How much safer am I as a citizen for, having all these systems in place? That's what I've got.
All right. Well, thank you.
We have IR online. If you could please turn your camera on and.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. So my name is Irene Ryan, for the record.
All right.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Irene Ryan.
Thank you.
All right. And do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true to the best of your ability?
I do.
All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Yeah, hi, thanks everybody. I am calling in to give comment against all of these resolutions, but in particular, something I learned today from Alderman Rashid's questions was that the fuel for the trailers, the camera trailers, comes out of the fire department's budget. And I just wanted to use this time to draw a parallel between that and what is happening in California right now. Massive wildfires are spreading across LA, Palisades, hitting so many communities. And LA County, at the very least, just decided this year to reduce their fire department's budget and increase their police budget. I'm not saying our ecosystem is the same as California's. I'm not saying we're at the same risk of wildfire, but I do think we're talking about in St. Louis taking money from the firefighters from their department to fund more police surveillance. And we're seeing in real time what decisions like that do when it comes to keeping people actually safe from environmental disaster, et cetera. So yeah, I would encourage the committee to reject these resolutions.
All right, thank you.
That's all the speakers have on board bill, resolution 186.
All right, we'll move to 187 then.
Board Bill 187, I have Annie Rice.
I'm going to skip. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
You can skip me this time.
Okay. Sage Coram.
Hello. Okay, so I think from our first round, yeah?
You have 3 minutes, whenever
Okay.
you're ready. Yep.
I think from our first round of testimony, we're starting to hear what improvements have been made in the version 2 drafts of these, but critically important, what overarching gaps still exist across use plans. I'm going to focus on a specific point here in the mugshot recognition technology, but just because I'm not talking about everything doesn't mean that there's not other flaws in. So this plan makes reference to data sharing through the Fusion Center, as well as the project, quote unquote, project participating agencies that presumably participate in the use of this technology, but those agencies aren't named, and so we don't know who this data is being shared with. As another top line here, this technology and several other technologies are also a part of, I think, what's referred to as the Rageous subscription. We have some disclosures of the technologies that are included in that subscription, but I'm not sure that the use that we have encompass everything in that subscription. That would be a question. And then particularly with this use plan, the discriminatory impact avoidance section here is woefully inadequate. This technology has documented evidence of producing discriminatory impact. And so the question is, what specific affirmative measures will be implemented to safeguard from those? And this plan does not answer that question. That question goes unanswered in a lot of the plans, saying that it's not used in a discriminatory way is not the same thing as how are people protected. Particularly with this technology, that is critical and should be up again, this question of whether or not the use of this technology continues because of its discriminatory impact. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Elizabeth Schwartz online.
All right, Ms. Schwartz, 3 minutes. Please proceed when you're ready.
Hi, so I want to testify against Resolution 187. I believe I talked about this the last time that I was here, but I do want to talk about what facial recognition algorithms actually do and my expertise as a librarian who does a lot of work with digital scholarship. So algorithms are built on massive stores of data, right? And what we're actually training them to do is notice patterns within those massive stores of data to make decisions for us, right? And so when that massive store of data in and of itself is biased, the algorithm you produce will be biased. We know for a fact, I looked up Regis very briefly. I'm glad that it was actually named this time around. And it looks like Regis was first created in 1983 when police departments went back and started digitizing their records. Now we know that policing is still super racist in 2025. But if anybody has any sort of qualms, we're talking about a pipeline of data going all the way back to 1983. That's years and years, decades of oppression baked into this algorithm that is then selecting individuals based off of those years and years and years of oppression. So to say that there will be no negative impacts, and this will be unbiased, is utterly false and laughable. That this is a system literally designed to operationalize racial profiling and mass incarceration of Black folks. So there's really no situation in which we can eliminate the bias from this system. The other thing that Sage talked about is how is this being shared among folks who subscribe to the Regis or Regis, whatever subscription. The way these companies make money, sure, we pay them $1.8 million a year, but for companies like this, that's breadcrumbs. They make money by actually being able to sell the data that they collect and make their algorithms stronger and better at operationalizing oppression. And so this data is absolutely being profited off of by this corporation and then shared to both public and private entities. And without knowing who all of those entities are, there's no way that you, the Board of Aldermen, can possibly say, yeah, we checked the box and we're cool with everyone who we're sharing this with. So to echo what Rachel said, technology does not make us safer. As a technologist, I completely believe that and urge you to reject this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kennedy Moore. Our next speaker is Rachel online.
Right. All right. You have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. I just want to really hit home something that Sage shared, which is, just to decode the language that was shared during the presentation. I believe Monet said that it's not possible for this technology to be used discriminatorially because of the policies and practices that SLMPD already has in place against discrimination in policing, and that that mainly consists of anti-bias trainings. So just to be clear, this use plan and the use of mugshot detection tool does not have any protections in place for against discriminatory use. Those do not exist in SLMPD with this technology, with the manufacturer, or something separate that maybe the police department came up with and put in place. They are saying that they are relying on their regularly scheduled, a couple times a year anti-bias training that the police department goes through as a part of just being employed as a police officer at SLMPD. That is not sufficient. As the last speaker explained, this more than maybe any, this technology tool has been proven to misidentify Black people with mugshot recognition. And that has resulted in extremely harmful consequences for the lives of Black people, both in St. Louis and in other cities. I urge y'all to reject this resolution until either there is more protection in place or completely ban the use of this technology because AI is biased. It comes from all the information that we have on the internet today, and that information is discriminatory, racist, and biased, which means that that is going to be the data that it produces for the police department. Furthermore, don't have time to get into all this, but there's plenty of evidence-based research out there showing that the anti-bias trainings that our police officers go through every year do not help improve their practices when it comes to racist policing against Black folks in St. Louis. That's all for this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have John Chasnoff online.
All right, Mr. Chasnoff, whenever you're ready, 3 minutes, please proceed. I see him on.
I think my audio is working, but it says the host has stopped my video. Okay, there we go.
All right, there you are.
Okay, so I'm
3
gonna
minutes. Go ahead and start.
I'm gonna use up some of this 3 minutes with some procedural questions. So I'm confused when you call for testimony on a given resolution, whether we're testifying about the resolution as it was written, or are we including these other use plans? So we have more use plans than resolutions, and I'm confused as to what our testimony should cover. I'm confused as to whether you're going to vote today when that issue hasn't been resolved. And I also wanted to point out that I did go to your website to see what was, the content of today, and it said resolutions, and it was just the old resolutions. That was just a couple days ago. So besides us not having real time to prepare and the improper posting, are you going to be voting today? And how many times do I get to testify today about either resolutions or use plan?
So you can testify on each resolution, and whether or not we vote, I guess the committee will discuss and see if we want to move forward today or hold things. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay. So I'm going to use the rest of this 3 minutes to start the discussion about the Real-Time Crime Center. The policewoman, in her presentation, she said that the Real-Time Crime Center is not with no data shared with other agencies. The Fusion Center, there is a cooperative, program around that. I'm not sure how that related to the question of whether there's a use plan for those things. When you look at the bill itself, it states very clearly what a surveillance technology is. It says any system that collects data or analyzes data for basically crime prevention purposes is considered a surveillance technology. And the Real-Time Crime Center definitely fits that definition to a T. It collects data, it analyzes data, and it has its own databases, its own monitors, its own expenses, its own personnel. All of that needs to be in a use plan. And I also wanted to point out that the ordinance strongly implies that conclusion when it talks about an approved real-time crime center operating in conjunction with other organizations. So the ordinance is stating that real-time crime center should be approved or disapproved. And to ignore that fact, I think, is to violate the resolution and the ordinance. And finally, the ordinance says that there can be legal consequences to violating the ordinance. It's a cause for civil action. And I don't think that the Board of Aldermen should be putting the city in creating a liability for the city where you may well be sued. There could be an injunction placed against the Real-Time Crime Center, in which case, since it's a hub for all these other technologies, they'd all be shut down as well.
That's your 3 minutes. If you could just finish your thought.
Okay. Yeah, so I know that in the past you've been quite concerned about creating situations where the city could be civilly liable, and I think this is clearly such a case.
All right, well, thank you.
This is for speakers for Resolution 188. I have Sage
Okay.
Coram.
All right. And you have 3 minutes. Start whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. I believe Resolution 188 is about the cybercrime technologies. So the major revision from the first draft was that we did receive 3 separate use plans for these technologies. The technologies were named, which was exceedingly helpful because then I was able to go and research a little bit about what these technologies actually are. And if I'm able to do that, the public's able to do that, you are able to do that so that you can learn more about these technologies. So BERLA is about vehicle forensics, and then the other 2 that are listed, the magnet gray key and the Celebrite, those are both forensic extraction tools. So for cell phones, tablets, those kinds of things. My predominant question that I would pose to the committee and to the department would be, it's a little unclear what the difference between Celebrite and the magnet gray key technology are. Do those actually have different capabilities? Because that's not clearly outlined between the 2 use plans. And if they don't, why are both technologies being used and paid for? So in terms of thinking about effectiveness, that would be my predominant question here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Elizabeth Swartz online.
All right. Ms. Schwartz, 3 minutes. Proceed when you're ready.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Resolution 188, except that I think if we were to actually entertain voting on it today, that would be totally in violation of the whole point of this legislation and process, because what is currently on the Board of Aldermen's website is a old version of the resolution that I'm trying to match up to the Cellbrite, Burla, and Magnet Gray Key technologies and surveillance use plans, which are super helpful on the police department's website. But what I can't figure out is, so the first surveillance use plan includes a bunch of other devices in it, including mobile devices, storage devices, computers, the network intrusion response / malware analysis, which I think might be part of either Cellbrite or Magnet Gray Key, and then also skimmer forensics and drone forensics. So it would be great to know what we're actually voting on today, or what is Resolution 188 anymore. I'm very confused about that. I don't think, like, as a member of the public, I've been unable to engage with this one at all because of the degree to which, or just how discordant what's on the police department's website right now and the actual resolutions. So as it's currently written on the Board of Aldermen's website, I would oppose it, and I would also oppose the use of all the surveillance use plans in general, because I don't think the city of St. Louis needs more surveillance. I think we need like shelters or something, because there's people freezing to death outside.
All right.
Our
Thank
next
you.
speaker is Chris Wilcox.
Hey, good afternoon again. I want to thank Alderwoman Saunier and Ms. Kennedy Moore from Abortion Action for calling attention to the risk of SLMPD collaborating with the new federal government after January 20th. It doesn't actually matter what the intent is. If video is subpoenaed by the state or the federal government, they will get it. If the state wants to stalk someone for getting an abortion, they will get it. If the state wants to stalk an undocumented immigrant, they will get it. It doesn't matter whether they intended it or not. The only way to prevent it is to not take that data in the first place. On a personal note, Members of my family rely on gender affirming care that both the state and federal government wants to make illegal within the next few years. It's hard enough that they have to endure slurs from cops on a regular basis. It's even worse if they are helping the state deny her health care that she needs. For ShotSpotter, there's no shortage of data on how transparently useless it is. ShotSpotter in the city of Chicago, finally put it into ShotSpotter in their own city. The MacArthur Justice Center found that ShotSpotters in the city led to 61 deployments per day during the period studied. Contrary to the grant SLMPD wants to get, the cops found no evidence of gun crime in 89% of the time. In a similar study in Oakland, California cops failed to find evidence of gun crime in ShotSpotter responses 78% of the time. Not only does it not do anything to prevent gun violence, it definitely does not lead to successful investigations. The low rate at which they solve murder should have already told us that. The broader context is the SLMPD has already been using most of this technology under the best conditions they could want, zero oversight. The over 600 cameras do not have a significant effect in creating safety or reducing violence. Knowing the risk of constant surveillance by unaccountable agencies, why should we continue to accept the panopticon police state that's already been built, let alone invite even more? Every dollar in the bloated police budget could be better spent on anything else to improve quality of life and reduce violence. Why give this department, with more cops per capita than 90% of cities in this country, even more toys to play with? Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Swartz.
I think I already testified against this one.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I still don't like it.
Kennedy Moore. I believe that's it for Resolution 188.
All right, let's move to 189.
Sage.
All right, 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. 189 is sound thinking, is ShotSpotter. Okay, we're getting a little confused on which resolutions were which. Okay. Well, I will just say very broadly, because I think we've received a lot of community voice in regards to ShotSpotter. This is a technology that is being outright opposed. So I would echo that sentiment as a member of the coalition, absolutely. And then to also say that ShotSpotter is being, has been in use in other cities. They're saying no to this technology after having had contracts using it. And other cities that have been testing this technology have declined to sign up for its services. So this is not declining to renew a ShotSpotter contract is not an imaginative thing to do right now. It is happening across the country because we have seen the lack of effectiveness of this technology, and other folks in the room have already spoken to right, what is the benefit here? How else could we be using this technology, especially when this technology is also deployed unequally across the city and contributes to further discrimination, particularly for communities of color. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Chasnoff.
All right, 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I wanted to just finish up a couple more thoughts about the Real-Time Crime Center. first of all, we learned today that this is in the intelligence, the Real-Time Crime Center is in the intelligence division. That didn't surprise me because its original name was the Real-Time Intelligence Center, and it was changed, I can only believe for PR reasons. It sounds better to talk about crime than intelligence. But we're here today to be talking about intelligence, and to not include a youth plan on the Real-Time Intelligence Center is in total violation of both the letter and the spirit of the ordinance. Really, besides all the other reasons, the technical reasons around posting and all that, why you shouldn't vote any of these out today, I think that the Board of Aldermen needs to hold the line on this particular issue and say that they really can't support any of these technologies until we have use plans around some of the most crucial ones, which are the Fusion Center and the Real-Time Intelligence Center. So I wanted to just finish up that point. In terms of ShotSpotter, the only thing I would say right now is that you all really shouldn't vote until you've read the police department's own report on ShotSpotter. I say the police department, it was written by the head of the data analysis section of the police department, and it's a damning report on ShotSpotter about its ineffectiveness, its waste of police time, and its waste of taxpayer money. So I really hope that you all will track down that report and read it. With any remaining time, I wanted to start to open up a broader look. Like I said, I've written down all my detailed specifics about these use plans, but I'd like to kind of go up to 30,000 feet and look at where we're at as a country and where we're at as a city and where we're at in terms of becoming a police state. Some of what I say might sound kind of exaggerated, but I wanted to start by telling a story. For other reasons, I had to apply to the FBI to get a criminal background check. And they encourage you to apply online because they say they'll respond quicker than if you respond by mail. If you start the process of going online, before you push the final button, a box pops up and it says you're now joining a federal network. When you do so, your computer and anything that your computer is networked with will become part of the federal network. You are giving up all of your personal privacy rights, and you can be monitored as part of this federal network. Now, I was flabbergasted when I saw that, and really shocked at the state of our country.
That
the
is your
FBI
3 minutes. If you could just wrap up your thought.
Next speaker
sorry
is
if you're
Chris
waiting for me.
Wilcox.
I'll just pick up next time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you again. I guess I want to give thanks to everyone who's shown up today, who's been either in person or virtual, to provide a comprehensive analysis of the police state that we already have in place, and we're talking about legislation to expand. I guess one other point I wanted to emphasize is, remember in the presentation that the police department put on today, they talked about how they modeled this proposal based on proposals of other cities under similar laws, which makes sense based on the fact that other cities have very similar laws to this one. Just one example I would like to point out is in its use plans, the city of San Francisco, which they specifically cited in that presentation, approved the use of robots to deploy lethal force. You heard that correctly. And all of us, who are horrified to see all those Boston Dynamics dogs, and we all knew that they were going to put guns on them eventually, which is, of course, what happened. So I would recommend that is not the kind of example, not that I want to give the police department any ideas, but I would recommend that is not the kind of example that we want to follow in terms of our city's relationship with police. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Kennedy Moore. Next speaker is Rachel.
All right, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you. I just want to name first that to some alders, I think it may feel like the discussion around gunshot detection systems in our city has become like politicized and is like a political polarized issue. And it may feel that way. So like the other folks testifying here today, I just want to reground us in the fact that the question around gunshot detection systems is about proven science of what works best to protect our city, best practices for the use of these technologies, and also fiscal responsibility in our city, what we spend our money on. Because at the initial use plan presentation that happened before today in December, there was an emphasis around how little money is spent on ShotSpotter in St. Louis compared to the overall police budget. And I don't think that that means that this type of technology should go without scrutiny, because it is still hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions over years that's being invested in technology that is not proven to function to make us safer. Again, reminding you that the only reason that the quote unquote expert that the police are depending on for their direction around ShotSpotter only changed his mind about the effectiveness of ShotSpotter because of a personal experience with a home invasion. Even after his home invasion, the results of his study showing that ShotSpotter was not proven to be effective in reducing gun violence in St. Louis remain the same. But the police and this professor are re-engaging in a study in Dutchtown, treating St. Louis neighborhoods and residents as experimenting grounds, which is really icky and dangerous. And not to mention that this expert is benefiting significantly in his professional career as an academic because of this partnership. And that is a huge reason behind his personal motivation for changing his mind around the effectiveness of ShotSpotter. Encourage y'all to look at the other data, not listen to this only, the one testimony expert that the police are bringing to the table around technology related to gunshot detection systems. I also want to mention the product description in the use plan. The police in the police presentation today, she explicitly explained that they're not able to provide a real product description and explanation of what ShotSpotter is and how it functions and where it functions. But I don't think that that's true, and I urge y'all to not take them at their word. It is just because there's a lack of transparency here, and they don't want to explain it. Just saying that, like, oh, people think it's those big things with the flashing lights outside on our street, like that's not ShotSpotter, but we actually can't really explain to you how it works and what it is. Press them on that, because that is not true. That is a political move. Please don't treat our streets like experiments, doing things that may or may not work just to prove and advance someone's professional career. I hear you saying that's my 3 minutes. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Elizabeth Schwartz, online.
3 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Cool. Okay, I think this is resolution 189. This one did not change, or it did, but Anyway, at least I know what I'm talking about this time, which is great. So I also don't think that we should pass this one today for all the reasons that everyone has said thus far. First of all, we know ShotSpotter doesn't work. Rachel, I think your point to press them to clarify how ShotSpotter works is right on. But in fact, I think the reason why they can't say how it works is because it in fact does not work at all. And if they had to get up here and say that, we would begin to wonder why on earth are we about to spend I did the math, $438,200 a year on an ineffective technology that the vast majority of St. Louisans think is ugly and terrible. Beyond that, I think the resolution the police posted says that the vendor is keeping data for 30 hours. I don't know what happens to it after that, though, because surely ShotSpotter isn't just based off of, surely they're not just making money based off of somebody listening to what's happening in St. Louis and then throwing that data away. They're probably using it to train their algorithms, because Clearly, they need some training data if the damn thing's not working. So again, we need to think more about what does the sharing of data actually entail, because whenever we have a product with a vendor, that data is almost certainly being used by that vendor. So to say, well, there's no MOU or this is only used internally isn't really fair when we know that we actually are entered into an agreement with a vendor that develops a technology. I think that's all. I mean, just to say that $438,000 isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things compared to the rest of the St. Louis Police Department's budget, all that tells me is that maybe the St. Louis Police Department's budget is a bit over the top. Perhaps we could get some more snow plows going. Alderman Narayan, I can't get out of my house. Like, that's why I'm not here in person today. I cannot get out of my house still. Maybe we could make it so that people aren't freezing to death. That would be cool. Maybe we could stop using ARPA funds for surveillance cameras so that I'm not sitting around trying to raise $6,000 to get masks to the city of St. Louis. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that one.
Thank you.
We have Annie Rice speaking on Resolution 190.
All right, Annie, 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you, members of the board. So 189 is the group camera, citywide camera policy that now has been split into multiple different types of cameras, I believe. But again, like, this is where the resolutions aren't matching the use plans. One of the things that I would say kind of overarchingly about all of these is one of the phrases that is coming up a lot in sort of like resistance to the new Trump administration that folks are saying a lot is do not comply in advance. And I've thinking a lot about that and what that looks like in our daily lives as to, whether we end up with a fascist, more fascist, I'd say it's probably already there, more fascist federal government. Not complying in advance means doing this work right now that we are doing here and putting some guardrails in place on technology. So when we're talking about cameras, when we're talking about data being stored, we're talking about the amount of data that is collected, is shared. If the data is collected and it is available, like some of the other speakers have said, then other members of law enforcement can get their hands on it. I also want to say that there is a lot of surveillance technology that is not nearly secure enough to guarantee against the public getting their hands on it. And we'll get into a little bit more of that when we get to the automated license plate readers. But it is unbelievably easy, as we had a member of the public who testified at the last hearing about his company. They exist to try to protect these things, and it is incredibly easy for things to be hacked, to get into that. So it's not just government overreach. Anyway, so quickly, situational awareness cameras. I appreciate the questions that were asked earlier about what exactly those are, and it sounds like they're just for live feeds that are coming off of a helicopter or a drone. The use plan says that there are no costs, which is not true because there was at least a cost of purchasing the equipment in the first place, and that should be included in the plan. So it can be true that there is not an ongoing cost, but one of the things that is missing from all of the use plans is personnel cost. So if there is someone who is specifically trained as a drone operator, if there is someone, what is the helicopter pilot, that should be included in the cost when we're doing this analysis. And the purchase, the purchase price was not included in this use plan. Mobile camera trailers was also included in this, I think. If I'm assuming which resolutions these are tied to, I appreciate the question about the gasoline knowing that the fire department is supplying it. Fascinating. Would love to do the connection on those budget lines there. Data retention, again, 30 days.
That is the 3 minutes. If you could just finish your thought, please.
Okay. This applies to each of them. fixed cameras, I would love for y'all to ask a little bit more about special taxing district cameras, but for data retention, 30 days is a long time for mobile camera trailers that are placed in residential neighborhoods that are sitting outside people's houses. I got complaints about lights flashing in people's windows when they were set out and all of that. So 30 days of just holding on to your movements walking out your front door is a long time without an ongoing investigation. You can set those limits shorter. I encourage you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Sage Kamran.
Yep. 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I will keep my comments on the camera short, as I feel Annie just walked us through that. Would absolutely double down on the last point made in terms of the variety of cameras, the amount of cameras, and the retention policies in place result in a huge amount of mass surveillance occurring in the city at all times. You can limit that. That is possible. I will also take this opportunity to echo John's point about the Real-Time Crime Center and the St. Louis Fusion Center. I think this is another point that is confusing because throughout the use plans, particularly in ones related to the variety of cameras, it says that there's data that's not being shared, but then they're run through the Fusion Center, or they're potentially monitored through the Real-Time Crime Center. I would just urge the committee to hold up the definition of surveillance technology that is provided in the ordinance against the description of the Real-Time Crime Center and the Fusion Center that are online, at least what I was able to find, because this is confusing to understand how something that is intended, the sole intent is to monitor surveillance data, is not in itself a tool of surveillance monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Elizabeth Schwartz online.
Oh, I have 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think this is 190, right?
That's correct.
Cool. It's really hard to tell what we're talking about here. So again, I would urge you all to not take a vote on this today because the public's ability to give comment has been really severely curtailed just by the disorganization of these websites. As a librarian, I feel like I am allowed to say that. We organize things, and this is not that. All that being said, as far as the citywide camera system goes, is that in this one? I think it is. So we have these 646 city-owned surveillance cameras. We asked to know what those actually are, the make and the model numbers of these, as well as any sort of software that they're running. That matters, right? Because that actually has a lot to do with what information is being captured. Because again, an image is not just a sort of flat, still image. A video file is not just the sort of information you see on a screen. There's also geographic information being captured and tons of other metadata that can be used to piece together a lot more information about someone than meets the eye. As far as the mobile trailers go, I think there's 47 of those. It says that this is like the SkyCop mobile surveillance unit, which I appreciated knowing that this was SkyCop because then I was able to go to the website and see that SkyCop mobile surveillance units also have like this health monitoring and video analytics thing. I'm not sure if ours are running that or not, but if they are, we absolutely want to know that because they use AI to automate theft detection, recognize objects, and track humans across different feeds. So if we are in fact using that, that is something that needs to be disclosed and is really, really concerning because as I was saying earlier with algorithms and AI, these things are quite literally built upon bias. We need to know what the training data is. Again, I'm just sitting here saying, is this even happening? Because once again, we don't have all the information we need from these surveillance use plans, much less have that information connected to the resolutions. I think this one might have also initially had the body-worn cameras and the in-car cameras in it as well. I don't know. But suffice it to say, we spent $1.7 million on ARPA funding to purchase these mobile surveillance trailers. That money was meant to be used to stabilize our economy in our region as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And yet we used it on this stuff instead. And I find that really disheartening and disturbing as somebody who is a member of an organization that is one of the only players in town still providing masks to people under an ongoing pandemic. We saw the rate of houselessness rise in the US by 18.1% this year. That money could have been used to create shelters, to set up programs to stopgap that from happening. And yet here we are spending money on mobile cop trailers to put them in city parks. And I'm really glad that Alderman Aldridge didn't fall down the other day, but like I think we could have accomplished that with like a fence. Or maybe plowing the street. Cool.
Thanks.
Chris Wilcox.
All right, thank you
3
for
minutes.
the
All right, whenever
continued
you're ready.
opportunity to speak. So I want to point out that the St. Louis Real-Time Crime Center turned 10 years old last year. This is the first time it has needed approval from the Board of Aldermen in all of that time. Annie and Rachel called some attention to the money that goes into surveillance. Much of it is private money, independent from the city budget. We know, for instance, that private foundations pay 1/3 of the police chief's salary. There is exactly one sentence in the camera use plan about feeding private cameras to the Real-Time Crime Center. There is a known practice in St. Louis of special taxing districts asking the courts to banish individual people from their neighborhoods, making their presence alone an arrestable offense. These are enforced by some of the same private cameras being fed to the Real-Time Crime Center. It's probably safe to assume that if Bi-State finishes making the Metrolink stations feel like a prison with their own cameras, those will be fed to the Real-Time Crime Center as well. At minimum, the practice of using private and third-party cameras to feed the Real-Time Crime Center needs to be detailed in a use plan, preferably more than one sentence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rachel, online.
3 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. Just want to reiterate something that my Alderwoman Sanier mentioned in her questioning, which is that these need to be separate resolutions. Every type of technology tool needs to have a separate resolution per the ordinance. So that definitely needs to happen before any sort of vote can take place. And that includes the different types of cameras that are used. Splitting them out into subsections within one plan is not sufficient to meet the language of the ordinance. Also wanted to double down on what Annie shared about including personnel cost and the original purchase cost in each use plan for each type of technology. This is really, really important because even if St. Louis has already spent the money on, purchasing this fleet of cameras and that technology, we do not have a true sense of how much money the city budget and the police budget is going to surveillance technology. Like, the data that the police department has shared throughout this process has already been incomplete because it has not included that information. So really encourage y'all to make sure that the personnel cost and original purchase cost of each tool is included in each use plan. Also wanted to mention that there's the police in their presentation today did not give any good evidence-based reason for why they set the data retention limits at the number of days that they do. Because there is no good reason. It is arbitrary, explaining that this is like a compromised reach between the number of days that the state allows. That's not the number of days that the state requires them to keep it. So just like, I guess, wanting to emphasize that the police department is never going to tell you that we have enough cameras in place to keep us safe. They will never say that. A huge part of their job as an entity is to grow the surveillance machine to be as expansive as humanly possible under the guise of solving crime. So don't rely on them to tell you when the amount of surveillance tools we have is enough to keep us safe. That is your job as elected officials and our job as the public, and we should be doing it together. Finally, I just want to mention that there's still no transparency or information around the deletion of the data after the retention period passes. So in addition to calling for the reduction of the data retention period, also wanting to call for more transparency, any transparency at all, language, information around how the data is actually deleted, because as our librarian testimonies have shared both in previous hearings and today, that process is not as simple as like hitting a big red erase button. That data can stick around forever, and we want to make sure that it is deleted and erased properly after those data retention limits expire. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kennedy Moore. Okay, so Resolution 191, Sage Kamran.
Three minutes. Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. I believe this is the use plan for the GPS investigative technology. I believe this is the use plan that changed the least between version 1 and version 2. The predominant question that I have here is, it does seem like both of these technologies use GPS to operate, but one is a physical device, I believe. It says it uses the GNSS system. I'm not sure if that is the vendor or who or what other entities are plugged into that system. That is unclear from the product description. And then the second technology is the one that we heard a little bit about, which is the subscription-based GPS technology that can be opted into. I have the sense it seems like this is used a lot in retail incidents and theft. However, that is a sense that I have. That is not something that is made explicit or clear in this use plan. So for this use plan to move forward, a much better understanding of what this technology is and how they are different for one another is required. Especially if the second one is a subscription that folks are opting into, it's not a technology that is perhaps fully held by the department, but more done in partnership, then we need a better understanding of what that partnership agreement is and how that data is shared between those entities, vendors, or parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Elizabeth Swartz online.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
This is 191, the GPS thing. Also, not enough information. Once again, we really, this one seems innocuous, right? It's like, okay, find my iPhone. Great. I lose my iPhone every single day and have to turn it on. And yet we need to know what it actually is, right? We don't know the vendor. Surely the police are not running their own geospatial intelligence, like software programming agency in the real-time crime center, or maybe they are, because we don't know what's in there. But I'm assuming that they're probably entering into some sort of agreement with some other company that provides GNSS, which is actually geospatial, like satellite navigation. So I don't think they have a satellite. If they do, it should be on the surveillance use plan. All of which is to say, like, we need to know who these vendors are. We need to know what this hardware is, and we need to know how that data is transferred between the St. Louis Fusion Center, the Real-Time Crime Center, and the vendor. Because even if the St. Louis Police Department is deleting this data, they're certainly in agreements with these particular software and hardware providers and manufacturers, and those companies often have rights to that data and use it. And so if we're giving the St. Louis Police Department the go-ahead to surveil us, we need to know what happens with that data, not just what they're going to do with it. So we really, I keep saying it, but we need to know who the manufacturers are of these things. We need to know the make and the model number of these things. And we need to know at every single point and how this data is managed, what hardware is being used, what software is being used, and how things are being deleted. That's going to be a lot of surveillance use plans, but like we have one chance to get it right, and it's right now, and we certainly haven't done that yet.
Thank you.
Chris Wilcox.
Thank you. And in an attempt to reinforce Elizabeth's point, we know, thanks to the Patriot Act, that private companies share information and the data they collect with federal law enforcement, like the Department of Justice and the NSA. So in addition to any risk of the data being collected by the police department to violate people's rights, if it is in the hands of private corporations, they can and do share that information with federal officials. So even if the police department does in fact completely and totally delete this data, if any of that data is retained by the vendor, it can and possibly will go to other agencies, the kind that I would hope that some of us would not want to obey in advance. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Chesnoff online.
Excuse me. 3 minutes.
First, I wanted to pick up on a point that Chris had made earlier about the private cameras that are plugged into the fixed camera network. I was part of working on this legislation from its very first draft and through the final negotiations. And the issue of private business districts and their cameras was a constant issue. They didn't want to have to be burdened with writing these use plans. And so we said in the ordinance that they were not a city entity. But it was well agreed upon that if those entities, if people were to plug their private cameras into a public network, then the public network would have to report on those cameras. So the police department should be reporting on those private cameras, their capabilities, their numbers, et cetera. And the fact that they're not doing so is another, along with the Real-Time Crime Center and the Fusion Center, another real omission in these reports that really has to get rectified. I don't think this is living up to the spirit of the law. But I wanted to get back to my narrative, which is really the important, really heartfelt thing that I came to say today, which is I was shocked by the FBI wanting me to give up all my privacy rights just so I could file an online application. And I think we need to stop and look around at the state of this country, what's going on in this country, and wonder what we might be doing to contribute to it and participate in it. Fascist leaders don't come to power on their own. The systems are already in place so that when they come in and misuse those systems, all the tools are there at their disposal. When Obama was president, we passed a national security law that said that we, under the guise of national security, that people could be whisked away to private unknown prisons, and their right of habeas corpus was nullified, and nobody needed to know where they were, et cetera, et cetera. Obama said, you don't have to worry, I'm not going to misuse this law. But the next president may well misuse them. And we're in a situation now where we are in the process of creating infrastructures for the loss of our civil liberties. In 1936, we just found a family picture of my grandfather and my mother and her whole family on a boat to Europe in 1936. The reason they were going was that my grandfather had escaped pogroms in Russia in 1905, and he was going back to his home country to urge people to get out before it was too late. None of those people took his advice, and most of them died. And I feel an obligation to my grandfather to raise the red flag today and say that we are in a situation where we are fast losing our liberties, counting on you all to be a stopgap, to stand up for not creating the kind of infrastructure that
There's your 3 minutes. If you could just wrap up your thought,
it
please.
is most likely to be misused. I began, well, can I just ask before I stop, how many more testimonies are we entitled to today?
I believe 2.
Okay. I'll continue my conversation with you all, which I very much appreciate having the time.
Absolutely.
Resolution 192, and Annie Rice.
All right. So this is the automated license plate readers, and there are a number of folks who have a lot of testimony around this and a lot of specifics to get into. One of the things that I think was revealing about this use plan is that there are currently 404 already mounted license plate readers in the city of St. Louis. That's at intersections, bridges, entrances to the city, exits to the city. They record every single car that comes through. They hold on to your license plate image, and there are other stories showing that they also are picking up political yard signs, bumper stickers, things like that can be saved as well. And they're holding on to that for 90 days, right? And they can map, so sorry, there's 404 of them. There are currently 14 in-car automated license plate readers already deployed with on patrol with SLMPD. They have an RFP out for one to be in every single car in the fleet. That you could map the entirety of your movements, right, for 90 days at a time from just this one piece of technology. That's frightening to me, right? That is, to me, is a massive overreach of the balance between the need to protect privacy, our freedom of movement, and gathering data that might help solve a crime in the future, right? License plate readers are not for crime prevention. They are for investigations after the fact, right? And there's really no reason to keep license plate images and the locations of where you're collecting them longer than a day if there's not an open investigation. Otherwise, why do you need to hold on to that? And like, I understand that the state says that you can have it for 6 months, but again, like some of my colleagues have repeated, you get to set those policies. You don't have to take just what the state says. You can reduce those things. It's absurd to me that this one probably should have gotten much more attention from us a long time ago. But now that we have the information, we're paying attention now. There are also a couple of articles that just came out from Wired magazine that I would encourage you all to take a look at that are recent, within the last couple of months, and as recent as 2 days ago, about the ability for these license plate readers to be hacked, that they are live streaming the footage to the internet, that people are just freely able to see whoever is driving through these things. So as we're talking about the safety and security of our data and our freedom of movement, this is a significant target for you all to ask or to tell the police department that you want changes before you will pass this resolution. So thank you.
Elizabeth Schwartz.
Sorry.
3 minutes, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Everything that Annie said pretty much. Again, we don't have information about the manufacturers of these license plate readers. I would assume that we're not just taking pictures, but we're analyzing the pictures with some sort of technology. We need to know what that particular technology is. It's likely something called optical character recognition, which is an algorithm and I am sure has different effects on different vehicles and lighting and all sorts of things. So there are many points at which bias can be introduced and how this data is actually being parsed that we just don't have because we don't know the make and the model of all of these, nor do we know what happens to the data afterwards. and how it's actually parsed and extracted and stored. Again, because I don't think that the St. Louis Police Department has just developed their own in-house system for this. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But if they haven't, we need to know that because that data is going to be shared with that vendor. And then beyond that, what else did I have on this one? Oh, I think that was it. There's really not much to say because once again, we don't have information that we need to determine whether or not this information is being handled carefully. Beyond that though, like I really don't think we need this. This seems like a massive waste of money. We don't need to know where everybody is at all time periods. And also, like Annie said, this doesn't prevent crime. Like if I wanted to just not, if you're gonna commit a crime in your car, you take the license plate off, you know? Like what's the point of this thing? So anyway, this seems like a massive waste of money to me. Again, people are freezing outside. We don't have the information we need to even determine if this is being done ethically, but I don't think that there's really any ethical form of massive surveillance like this at all when yeah, it like just there's no good way to spend this money on this. This one's silly. We don't need it.
Thank you.
John Chesnoff.
Uh, 3 minutes whenever you're ready.
Okay. So I want to kind of continue to paint a picture of where we're at as a country. We've seen the Washington Post refuse to endorse anyone for president. Saw the same thing with the Los Angeles Times. These were major media outlets that are designed to serve the public, but are owned by, rich billionaires. And we've seen those billionaires going to the president-elect and basically bending the knee, giving in to him on various issues. And you wonder, well, what does that have to do with surveillance technology today? I don't think we can count on our corporate leadership to keep us out of the situation that I think we're devolving into. And I particularly raised that point when 40% of our police chief's salary is paid for by corporate entities here in St. Louis. And so we've already started this process of building an infrastructure which will not protect our civil liberties. And we're only heading further down that path. I know that a lot of the alderpersons feel constrained because their constituencies are calling for, stop crime in my neighborhood. We need these cameras. But I think that we've seen that you can get people to vote against their self-interest. If you put them in a ghetto and they have no job opportunities and they're living amidst the crime and poverty that result, they're going to call for solutions. And when solutions are provided to them by the police force, they're going to buy into those solutions. And I really am hoping that you alderpersons, again, will hold the line on this. We'll say there's a better way to do this, that if we can reduce poverty, we can, make progress on racial discrimination, that we don't need this kind of surveillance and can only lead us down a path that's causing us really serious problems. I'm going to end my testimony there, but with just one more thing to say. This will probably be my last testimony. I'm sorry. This will probably be the last time I testify before you all. I've decided that it's time to leave the country. And so that's why I needed that FBI background check, why I invoked my grandfather and his going back to Europe in 1936. I think that we are headed into a really serious situation. I've been working on this surveillance issue since before there was a real-time crime center, when it was being created. And I've watched it develop. I've watched the cameras build and I've watched the system build. And I've been writing about it and talking about it and organizing about it for 12, 13 years now. I've shot my best shot at this. I just beg you all to watch where we're headed as a country and to stand up and resist, because I think that really, we're just buying into a system that's going to bite us all in the butt. I decided as a Jew who grew up after the Holocaust that it's time for me to get out. And I can't help but want to issue a dire warning to everyone. I know I sound hysterical. I'm sorry I'm crying. But I couldn't feel this more sincerely. So goodbye and best of luck to all of you.
Likewise, Mr. Chasnoff.
We have Rachel online.
You have 3 minutes. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you. With the ALPRs, I really, really, really urge y'all to require a reduction in the data retention policy for the license plate readers. There are so many issues with them that some of my colleagues have already shared. It's been tested quite recently, and took like a civilian technology person 20 minutes to hack into the license plate reader as a third party. They are not secure and are not going to keep our data safe. And so the fact that there are already almost 500 of them in the city is sufficient. And to have one on every single cruiser means that SLMPD will see everywhere that every single person in the city goes, every moment of every day. And that is the definition of an abuse of power and violation of our civil liberties and right to privacy as residents. It is absolutely terrifying to me that that is something that they are actively putting out an RFP for. I urge y'all to ask the police department and the circuit attorney's office how many cases have been built using the license plate data, how many have been prosecuted, and how many have won using that data before you allow the police to carry out this RFP for a reader in every single vehicle. And if they don't have or are not tracking that data, that is a huge problem. And that is also abuse of power, because they are just purchasing this technology and expanding surveillance without proof that it keeps any of us safer. That is also an issue for fiscal responsibility. It's a waste of money. We don't need a license plate reader in every single car, and they do not need to retain that data for 90 days, 60 days, or even 30 days, unless it's part of like an active investigation with a case. I highly, highly urge y'all to reduce the data retention policy here to under a month. I would say less than 2 weeks, unless part of an active investigation already, because there's absolutely no good reason why they should be retaining that data in the first place, especially given how vulnerable that data is to being hacked by third parties, let alone what state and federal entities have already been shown to be using that data for to criminalize vulnerable residents who are being racialized as immigrants, who are crossing state lines for gender affirming care, for reproductive health care. All of those things are already happening. And continuing to allow the data to be retained for so long, and also expanding the reach of the police department by putting a reader in every single car, is only going to make that worse. And it's guaranteed to increase criminalization of vulnerable people in our community.
That's your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, we have 193, Ann Rice.
Three minutes, Annie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I just want to also publicly acknowledge and thank John Chasnoff for the immense amount of time and years that he has put into this, and not because he's getting paid to do this or anything, but this is dearly important to him, and we absolutely stand on his shoulders as we move forward. For body-worn cameras and in-car cameras, that's what we're on now, which again, two different policies that came out of one here. Body-worn cameras and in-car cameras are helpful tools for the public because they are supposed to provide transparency about police interactions with the public. If they are used correctly, then they can show us when policing is working as intended, as it can also provide a defense for civilians who are in positions of abuse. That can be shown. So this is an area that can be a positive, but there are some questions that we still have around data retention. The data retention answers are not clear enough. They're talking about it depends on the level of crime, and I understand that is probably something that is in a policy that could be better spelled out in the plan itself, so that we understand what type of crime and for how long that data is retained for. Questions on this also around public release. It says that it's prohibited unless it is approved by the police commissioner. You should ask for a better policy on that. What are incidents that are in the public interest in which body-worn camera footage should be released immediately, right? I'm sure that other cities have different types of policies around that, and you can be more specific rather than just relying on the police commissioner to make a decision on that. In-car cameras, they're under cost. It says that an RFP has been issued to increase the number that the department currently owns to how many. This is a number-specific question in a use plan that is number-specific, so I would encourage you to get an actual answer to that question. Quickly, just to wrap up on testimony here, I do want to address the request to sit down with members of our coalition after the last hearing for community input. I want to reiterate, we gave significant written testimony, red line copies of use plans, and 3 hours of public testimony before that request. So I think that we more than met the community collaboration as far as that goes. And so I understand the intent, but I do think that, so rather than the narrative being that we rejected an opportunity to meet, we did provide a ton of feedback before that request was made. And one other thing to address from the last hearing, and this ties back to what Rachel said about what amount of surveillance keeps us safe. Chief Tracy used the example of the killing of the United Healthcare CEO in New York City and the capture of a suspect days and states away as an example of surveillance technology working. I think a lot of us view that very differently, that it was another civilian who recognized an image and called the police. Was it the surveillance or the human being who gets to claim responsibility for the arrest? Is there ever a level of surveillance technology that keeps us as members of a community safe? Or is it humanity, community, relationships, mutual aid, people having their needs met, and systems of reconciliation and repair that keep us safe? Not just a
That's
system
your
of
3 minutes,
cameras.
if you could just wrap up.
Not just a system of cameras and surveillance technology that maybe divides us even further and might end up making us less safe than ever. Thanks.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Swartz online.
3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay, I had a few really specific things with these two. So first, with the in-car cameras, the surveillance use plan posted on the police department's website says currently the in-car cameras cost $752,600. An RFP has been issued to increase the number of these. These costs include all the maintenance and data storage for the contract period of 5 years, with which the current contract is set to expire in July of 25. However, in another portion of the surveillance use plan, it says there are no MOUs or partnerships for these technologies. So maybe I'm not understanding the difference between an MOU and a contract, but like clearly this is just like a blatant example of, even for something that seems as simple as a camera, there is a contract, there is data storage, and all of that is part of this surveillance infrastructure, and therefore each of it needs a surveillance use plan so that we can actually understand what's happening. Likewise, like Annie said, body-worn cameras are a tool that can be used to increase accountability for police. Currently, the St. Louis Police Department has 800 cameras. However, the surveillance use plan says 600 officers are wearing them, and they would like to buy 1,000 more cameras for over $1 million. Why would they not just put on the 200 that they have? What's happening? I do not know. Lastly, I just wanted to go back to what Annie said about how, there was this idea that like surveillance was going to keep us safe. Surveillance didn't keep Brian Thompson safe. Brian Thompson died because of a broken system in which profit is valued over human lives, and somebody made him an example of that. We're living in that same moment right here. We're valuing this surveillance equipment that can protect property and our contracts with these vendors over the actual people of St. Louis, so much so that a community activist and person who's pretty freaking awesome is leaving the country. As someone who also is a Jew and whose family escaped pogroms in Russia to come to St. Louis in 1904 for the World's Fair, that I'm really trying to hold it together. This is absolutely heartbreaking. So I don't think there's really any amount of surveillance that keeps us safe when we live under a system that's killing us. Let's fund things that actually keep us safe. Again, like masks, like shelters, like food for people, like universal basic income. These are the things that keep us safe. Surveillance just records the disasters that happen as a result of this broken system that's working as designed to enrich the rich and powerful and kill the rest of us. Thanks.
Sage Cameron.
Three minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. I wanted to back up to the previous resolution. I think I left my name off the testimony sheet, so I wanted to speak on the ALPRs a little bit more. This is another instance where having the product description from the manufacturer is critical because different vendors use their data differently. So even if in this use plan, it's saying that data is not shared with other parties, depending on the vendor can share or sell that data on their end. So that's critical to understand which manufacturer, which vendor is being used here. Specifically, we've heard from folks about the retention period here, this 90-day period. I want to say that the ACLU got a special shout out in the presentation as sort of a nod that this 90-day was a sanctioned okay period. I want to be clear, 90 days is not okay. So 90 days might be better than 180 days, but 90 days is not acceptable. I absolutely echo everybody calling for a shorter retention period because this technology doesn't target single license plates. They are active readers, and so they capture images of every license plate going by. And then there's also usually, and we need more information from the product description, but metadata like the location of that camera and timestamp that then are also sort of stored with that image. So similar to the cell site simulator that is intended to target, right, an individual device, but all devices in the vicinity are impacted, this license plate reader can be said that it's being used because they're trying to target a specific vehicle or backtrack on a specific vehicle, but it's impacting all vehicles that go by that license plate reader. So there absolutely needs to be a shorter retention policy there. And I think that's all I have. I echo sort of the overarching issues across these plans that I think everyone has done a really wonderful job outlining. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers.
All right. So let's get back to my agenda here. So then let's, is there any written testimony?
Yes, it was 14 written testimonies, I believe, all in opposition.
All right. Members of the committee, please take notice of that, and that testimony will be in the drive. I guess I'll open it up to the committee again for any comments or questions, and then we'll move forward from there. Alderman Oldenburg, any questions, comments? All right. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're on a time constraint here, and I have took plenty of notes here. But there are some things that I am going to state just for the record. I do have some questions, and I can ask people that are here afterwards, like the coalition that was mentioned by Ms. Sage. Just wondering if anyone from our committee or board or anyone is a part of that coalition. If not, would like to see if that's an option, right? Because just like people state, they just hear about stuff here today. Some of us could have maybe addressed some of this stuff had we heard about some of it earlier too. And we have heard from some, but some of the things I think could have been addressed. Before I go into that, I do want to absolutely uplift my friend John Chestnut. He is one of the strongest people I know, and to see him break down and cry today, that level of vulnerability is something that I've never seen in him. I have the utmost respect for him and his wife and his family and his plight. And so he knows that I don't care where he moves in this world, I hope he knows he can always call on me. Since it was thrown out here today several times, as a Black woman, a Black mother of girls, now a Black grandmother of a beautiful baby girl. The perception that I would not be in a position to fight to protect reproductive rights is insane. And so when you say and when you spew stuff like that, it has to be addressed, because that is how people create some misnomers and division about people that are out here fighting for their communities every day. Let's talk about the fight for communities every day. It was stated about elected officials. As a mother, a Black mother, born and raised in North and West St. Louis all my life, a mother, a grandmother, and now as an elected official, I get calls daily, weekly about cameras. So I have to find the balance in what that looks like for my community. I can't tell my community. I have camera projects going on right now as we speak while I'm sitting here through BPS that I'm fighting for, constituent and resident led, not by the police. The police didn't call me for them, but the constituents and the residents called me for them. When a little boy just 2 weeks ago, 14, was getting chased and gunned down up into a park in the 10th Ward. If we didn't have the cameras, there's no way we could have found out what happened to that boy. And yes, while it is reactive, I still stand here and fight for proactive programs before. As my former colleague knows, I fought with her for the legislation for this, where we are today. I carried the enabling legislation that put the $500,000 into the first Cure Violence program, which is what Show Me Peace mirrors now today. I carried the legislation for other programs that were talked about today. I mean, there has to be a balance. It's not an or situation here. It has to be an and situation. And if we don't communicate about what that and is, it's not fair to our constituents. I have some constituents that text me during this hearing that were, quite frankly, offended by some of the things that were said. That's not fair, because they live this every day. I was in a meeting earlier today where cameras were requested. So I'm just stating that to say, I'm here for making sure that we can protect proactively and reactively until we get to a place, God forbid, under the rainbow, where we don't need surveillance, where we don't need first responders and police as our first responders. But pitting these kind of things against each other is not the answer. And I can help explain that to you more. I know we have time, but pitting those things against that and not being able to work to find balance is not the answer. Because not doing anything, right, Keeping it held and not doing anything is worse than using this opportunity to get it to a place that we can be comfortable in and where our constituents can be comfortable in. And I'm not speaking to anyone specifically in this room. I'm not speaking to anyone specifically online. I'm speaking to the greater good of the community, and I'm speaking as the 10th Ward Alderperson. I'm being very clear as we legislate down here on our lived experiences. My lived experience from the time people text me right now as I'm speaking to the time I've been Alderperson to the time I've been a resident in the city of St. Louis. I cannot 100% just say we don't need surveillance, we don't need cameras, we don't need police, we don't need these things. I haven't lived that world and I haven't lived that life. If anybody else has, good for you, but I haven't. And so my responsibility down here is to the constituents of the 10th Ward. My responsibility down here is to make sure that programs just as Show Me Peace is fully funded and fought for. UBI, anything else that I fought for down here, the same way I would fight for making sure that our departments have the tools and resources they can do to do their jobs as well. If you don't understand that, I'm sorry, but you have to, maybe you have to walk these shoes and live in these shoes to understand that. But the threats and the things that are being said and the political subliminal messages that are being said, that's not the way to do it. And if you want to be fair about getting some stuff done right down here, it's not a joke. It's not a gotcha moment. This ain't funny. Ain't nothing about this funny. So I want to make sure that I stand on record, and my chairman knows this, which I stated to him earlier. I'm in position to do what we need to do to get this work done so that we can move forward for our constituents and maybe, again, get to that wonderful place where we don't need any of it. Until then, I'm in a place of protecting the entities, the people, the residents, not just of the 10th Ward, but beyond, on how we can protect not only our reproductive rights, but our safety as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we're not taking any votes today, I will be prepared to take votes next week. And we are not only winding down in time here, but we are winding down in time for our legislative session. I want to make sure that if you didn't know that, and we know it, but I want the public to know it, that we are getting ready to take another break. So we have work to do. We can either keep running around in circles with it, or we can get together and get the work done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alderwoman Keys.
She's no longer online.
Okay. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Great. Thank you, Chairman. I don't have questions right now. I just want to thank both members of the police department and the community. And I also want to thank my colleagues. I do want to echo what the alder lady from the 10th said, particularly about really the thought about getting things done. I mean, not just about the timeline. There's no time for pointing fingers, but we are in a unique moment to get these plans done. And ultimately, I believe the best way to get what you want is to say what you want so we can talk about it, put it on paper, and move it along. We are in a crunch time here. We've got 3 weeks left in this session, and we're on for a break. And so I think everybody here on this Public Safety Committee, especially those that worked diligently on CCOPS, are committed to getting this done, but really the best way to do that is by being clear about what people want so we can get it done. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Sonier.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think I first just want to start. I know Mr. Chansanoff is not on the call anymore, but I too have known Mr. Chansanoff since 2014. We actually had an experience where we were hiding in the bushes together, hoping that we wouldn't be caught by I think it actually was SLMPD at that time running. And so I've known Mr. Chansanoff for such a long time. He's been such a strong advocate. And, you know, I think when you were talking, you kind of made me emotional and just, you know, it's very sad to hear when people think the only way forward is out. And I do think there are a lot of people in our state, in our city, in our country who feel that way. So I just want to thank Mr. Chansanoff for all of his work, for all of his effort. And I hope that if you should step away, which I will say I'm also a fan, you have done your time. So if it is best that you, at this point, for you to pass the baton, I hope that you were encouraged by the many people that you saw on the call today who are here and happy and willing to take, that baton forward. To the community and folks who came here today and testified, I do understand you all's frustration. I do understand you all's, you know, impatience. And I do understand for some people, CCOPS was many, many years late, so I think in some ways with some of these policies, when you're doing something for the first time, you're kind of behind the ball and people have been advocating and fighting for it for a long time. I do think it's important. And like I said, I think I sent an email and put, people who I saw at the committee last time, I forwarded you that email. I sent Monet, who's the chief of staff for Chief Tracy. I sent her an email with all my questions. So I've tried as best as possible in my role to do what I think is our job, which is to hear the community's concerns, to figure out what it is that we can do. And if any departments, whether that's the police department or any other department has a question, do what we can as speakers and representatives of the people to say, hey, this is what I think the people are asking for. These are the questions I believe they have. This is the clarity that they're seeking. I do also understand that there are members of our community who feel like, yeah, I'm against any sort of technology. I don't want any kind of technology. And on the flip side, to Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard's point, I understand that there are residents who feel like they want as much technology as they can possibly get. And so I think a lot of times in our roles, we're trying to figure out what that looks like. I think most people now at this point are familiar with a lot of my personal beliefs and personal stances, but something I've tried to practice and kind of have grown into is that Alderwoman Sanye does not always do what Alicia Sanye might. Because Alicia Sanye, as an individual, has her feelings, has her thoughts on things, but Alderwoman Sanye has to do the best she can to look at the full board, to look at the full table, to look at all the stakeholders, and to make a decision. And so, what I'm hopeful for today is that we can get to a point where you guys at least can see, again, whether you ever agree with what the police department is trying to do, which I totally understand the disagreement, and I think that that's what makes our democracy. We need people to put their perspectives for us. We need people to hold all of us accountable. We need people to ask questions, to be critical thinkers. And we don't need 100% agreement. If we ever have 100% agreement, we probably have entered a place of fascism, because that just does not exist. But I can say that it is my hope that we do reach a point where you guys do feel from the use plans that transparency is happening, and that you have the information you need, where should anything ever go awry with any of the technologies, accountability should look like. So that is my desire, and I think that's the desire of all of us who voted for the CCOPS legislation, because I believe all of us did vote for it on the committee. To that point, I can say I'm not prepared to take a vote today, and I would vote no if we took a vote today, because I think there is still outstanding information that the community has requested that needs to be cleared up. I did take notes and take questions, and so I'll do what I did last time. Like I said, I started off by acknowledging how much progress the plans have made. I started off by acknowledging Chief Monet, who I know I can talk to her so many times. We had so many email exchanges. I know she has been working very hard to address these things, but I also let her know along the way, hey, I'm here to represent the people and represent my constituents, and they have questions. And I kind of told her to compare the use plans to our legislation process. When I have bills, I rarely can pass them after one hearing. Sometimes can't pass them after two hearings. Sometimes I might go through a whole committee process, get to the floor, and the bill fail. That is our process. And so I think when it comes to these use plans, it would be helpful for us to look at it as if, these are not final documents, they're proposed documents. And the reason we have the hearings is because we want to get the feedback from the community. Understanding that nobody would ever be happy, but hopefully we can do what we can just to show the transparency and the accountability. So I would just thank you all for being here. I took diligent notes. I'm going to send that information over just as I did last time, and hopefully we'll get clarity. I know someone is still here, and if anyone from the police department is watching, one of the things that I do have a very strong question about is the product manufacturing numbers or information, and I'm wondering, is it possible that we can take that from whatever contracts you have in place so that people can go and specifically find the technology that we have? I just can't imagine if we had to purchase it from somewhere. We must have the information on exactly where it's from somewhere. But I will include that in an email. And just again, I thank everyone for being present today. And, I do hope that you can feel that both my colleagues and us, that we are doing the best we can to move this forward. Again, understanding nobody's ever going to be happy, but doing our best to uplift the concerns of the community.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Aldrich.
I think he may have had to, is he online? Because he may have had to step
He's
out.
online. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He just,
I had to pull over here to make sure I'm following the rules.
Be careful.
Yeah, I did I pulled over, but I'm gonna keep it short. I know we spent a lot of time. I want to make sure our staff get out, STO TV get out. They work very long hours. Appreciate them. I want to thank the police department for bringing some revised use plans. I will recommend to the chair, please make sure these revised use plans are actually on the Board of Aldermen website to send this over to the clerk so community can kind of know where to find these updated use plans or the update that will, I guess, turn into the use plans. I think that's important. I do also just want to thank the community. This is the first go around with CCOPS. It is an honor that I was able to work with the alderwoman from the 6th Ward and the community to get this across the finish line. So there will be hiccups. Nothing will be perfect. But I think what we're having today is a healthy conversation. We all don't think alike. We all come from different walks of life. We all have different involvement when it comes to technology surveillance. So I think today was a very healthy conversation. I look forward to continuing to work with both sides of the aisle to make sure that even though this may be the first version, we get the most information. I hear people concerns that from the community, and I don't want those concerns to be taken as that we don't want technology. Like Alderwoman Sonia said, there are some people that don't want that, but I know, several folks that I worked with the coalition to get this passed. It was not that they are anti-technology, but they want to just make sure, how the technology is being used. I think somebody said making sure that our tax dollars are actually being effective in the way that we are spending these funds when it comes to technology. So, I continue to look forward to work with, like I say, both sides to make sure we get as much information as possible in these first iterations of use plans. And then, this is not just a one-time end all. This is an annual thing. There's going to be more departments. The street department will have to come in front of the committee to talk about the red light camera. So this is kind of a learning curve, but I think this is a great start. It's more than what we had in the past. And thank you to people like Mama Jamala, John Chesnoff, so many people who have led the charge to make sure that the CCOPS national legislation was ideally implemented here in the city of St. Louis. And thank you to my colleagues, who voted for it. And I look forward to getting to work and figuring out how we can get this done in an ample amount of time so that we can have some use plans on the books for the city of St. Louis.
all right. Well, thank you, Alderman. Yeah, just to wrap up, I want to appreciate everyone who's been a part of this process thus far. We're not going to vote on this right now. I'm going to take back some of the feedback and see, what changes we may be able to get in place and hopefully get this thing across the finish line. I know that, people have very strong feelings both ways on this, as the Alderwoman from the 10th pointed out. The concerns that I get are, people want cameras, people want more police patrols, et cetera, and then I hear, the next phone calls from someone who doesn't. And so to try and balance that is always a tricky thing, but that's what we're here to try and do. I am certainly committed to continuing to push on that. And with that, we'll hold these in committee for now. And it looks like all members were present. So just in the interest of getting everyone out of here relatively on time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I had said so moved, sorry. And Alderwoman
Okay.
Shamin Clark Hubbard seconded.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. Then I'll request previous roll.
Previous roll. Sorry.
Hearing no objections, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.